Story 1. Ex-husband and his wife demanded custody of my daughter after abandoning her for 8 months. I, 33F, was married for 8 years to my ex-husband Peter, 39M. But we got divorced a year ago because he confessed that he'd been having an extramarital affair with his ex-girlfriend from college for about 3 years. I hadn't seen that coming at all because Peter and I had a 4-year-old daughter. So for him to have an affair with his ex even after he had a daughter was unbelievable for me. But it was true, and we ended up getting divorced, and I decided to raise our daughter on my own. He got married to his ex-girlfriend, Mandy, 30-8F, a few months after our divorce was finalized. I got to know about his wedding from his friends because, naturally, after the divorce we didn't bother to keep in touch. I also managed to get full custody of our daughter, and he only visits her on the weekends under my supervision. But after his wedding, he just stopped visiting at all. I was fine with it because that just meant no more silence while he tried to play with our daughter, and I stayed in the room and tried my best not to kick him out. He'd visited a few weekends while we were getting divorced, and I'd let him because our daughter seemed to like being with him. But once he stopped, I didn't bother to reach back out again. It's been close to a year since our divorce was finalized, and the last time I saw him was 8 months ago, if I'm not mistaken. Since then, I've been focusing on work and raising my daughter because that's all there is to do for me. But last weekend, Peter showed up at my door without warning, and it was a really intense interaction. When I opened the door to find him there, I thought that he was there to meet our daughter, but he told me that he was there to talk to me. I found it kind of strange because we'd had nothing to talk about for almost a year now, but nevertheless, I told him to continue. He told me that his wife, Mandy, was planning on pressing charges against me if I didn't give them full custody of our daughter soon. She wanted me to hand over my daughter because she felt that as a single mother, I wouldn't be able to provide for her as well as they would, and in a way I'd be depriving her of a comfortable childhood on purpose. Which is why she felt that those were grounds for her to press charges against me for neglecting my daughter. And so, Peter was at my door asking me to hand over my daughter to them right away, and soon they'd have the legal procedure completed as well, because I was incapable of raising her on my own, according to his wife. I totally flew off the handle when he said that to me and slammed the door shut in his face, then told him to get lost unless he wanted me to call the cops on him. I couldn't believe that he'd even thought for a second that he could just come up to me and demand that I give my daughter up after he'd straight up ignored our existence for almost an entire year. I wasn't fazed by whatever Mandy was threatening to do either because it was literally baseless. She couldn't just press charges against me for neglecting my daughter only because I was a single mother, because that's just ridiculous. I wasn't scared of that, but I was scared of Peter returning and reminding my daughter that he existed once more. It had been hard enough to get her to forget about her dad without telling her the truth, and I just couldn't put her through that once more. I also just didn't like the idea of him having any access to me at all because whatever he'd said the other day was actually really creepy, and the fact that he didn't think there was anything wrong about what he was suggesting was also concerning. So, I decided to move in with my parents for a while until I felt safe enough to go back to living on my own. It would also be convenient because then my nanny would also be able to take a break for a couple of days. And so, 2 days after Peter's reappearance, I moved back in with my parents and have been living with them since then. I didn't hear from Peter after that until 2 days back when he showed up at my parents' place as well. He knew that this was the only other place I was likely to be, but now that I had my mom and dad with me, I felt a lot more confident and ready to fight with him. My daughter was fast asleep at the time, and she was being looked after by my mother in the upstairs room, so no matter how loud I got, she wouldn't be able to hear me, and I was free to say whatever the heck I wanted to. He looked really upset and told me that they weren't going to press charges. They couldn't, even if they wanted to, but he still found it unfair that I'd just taken away our daughter's custody forcefully only because he cheated. He told me that the real reason he'd come back the other day after so long was because both he and Mandy could feel the void that his daughter's absence had left in their lives. Even though she wasn't her bio mom, apparently she'd met my daughter several times while they were still together, and whenever he'd take our daughter out, they'd go and meet Mandy. So they'd begun to think of themselves as her parents too, and Mandy believed that she would have made a good stepmom had I given her the chance to prove it, which I didn't. Peter said that it was unfair of me to file for full custody knowing that it was unlikely that he'd be able to get joint custody since our daughter was still relatively young. And also, he'd been cheating for 3 years before he finally confessed. One of the major reasons he didn't get full custody was because of his job, which happened to be taxing, and he had to work long hours and travel often, which wouldn't leave him with enough time to look after our daughter personally. And I didn't even know Mandy that well, so she wasn't even in the running to get custody regardless of her relationship with Peter. The best arrangement his lawyer could manage for him legally was visitation rights, but I don't see how that was my fault, exactly. He's the one who messed up his chances of getting joint custody by cheating because his infidelity did play a huge role in the custody battle, and after his divorce was finalized, he pretty much gave up and let me have full custody. So I honestly don't understand why he's blaming me for any of this. He told me that he just wanted to reconnect with his daughter, and so did Mandy, which is why they were here asking me for another chance. He tried to persuade me to give them another shot at being parents by saying that it would be beneficial for my daughter in the long run, and even said that I'd regret not letting them bond now when in the future my daughter would demand an answer as to why she was never allowed to be a part of her father's life. So, to avoid being blamed in the future, Peter wanted me to let them build a proper relationship with my daughter because, despite the infidelity, he insisted that he'd always been a good father and Mandy was desperate to see her one more time. I didn't know what to say at the time, but I knew for a fact that I didn't feel comfortable letting them be around my daughter because I had zero trust or faith in them on a personal level. My husband had betrayed me and lied to me for 3 whole years. That's not something I've let go of just yet. And Mandy had been with him in their lies all along. So, for them to ask me to let them be a part of my daughter's life after all that they'd done seemed like a ridiculous idea. I don't know if I did the right thing or not, but once more, I told Peter that it was too late to change the past now, and he needed to come to terms with the fact that our daughter wasn't his anymore because he'd been totally MIA for the last 8 months of her life. It had been really difficult for me to explain his absence to her, and I wasn't about to do it all over again just because he and his wife wanted to be with her right now. Then I told him to go away again and shut the door. And he did go away at the time, but since then, he's been texting me nonstop and trying to persuade me to let them have a shot. He keeps insisting that our daughter needs him just as much as she needs me, and that I'll regret my decision in the future when my daughter resents me for saying no to him in the present. It's gotten to a point where I genuinely don't understand if I'm doing the right thing here or not by keeping them apart. Am I the asshole for not letting my ex-husband be a part of our daughter's life after he cheated on me and cut us off for 8 months? Date 1. Okay, so I decided against letting him back into our lives. I was crazy to even be considering it, and I think it was because I was feeling over-emotional since I was seeing him after a really, really long time. But yeah, not going to happen. I spoke to my parents about what I'd been feeling. They were vehemently against even speaking to him again because he's just a horrible person who screwed me up and completely ruined any chance I had at happiness in future relationships by lying to me and cheating for 3 freaking years despite being in a relatively happy marriage. Probably wasn't happy enough for him, I suppose. It's been 2 days since I posted, and most of the comments on my original post have been ones that advised me never to let him into my life ever again and to try and get a restraining order against him. I think that's what I'll do if he shows up again because I don't think he's the kind of guy to give up easily. I've contacted my lawyer already and am trying to terminate any parental rights he has at all because he obviously doesn't deserve to be a dad. The kind of father who can just abandon their child for months on end without an explanation and then come back when it suits them isn't someone who can be trusted at any cost, and I know it better than anyone. Besides, I don't even know what he'd been up to during those 8 months that he didn't visit us at all. So it's really strange that he thinks I'll just welcome him back with open arms now that he's finally ready to bond with his daughter. Tough luck, buddy, but that's not how the world works, and that's certainly not how my world works. I've even blocked him everywhere because the last couple of texts that he sent to make me feel empathetic towards him rubbed me the wrong way because they're all phrased like I'm the villain here and he's the long-suffering victim who's been separated from his daughter because of my cruelty and selfishness, as if he never cheated and then pulled the disappearing act on me afterward. I can't believe I let myself get carried away at all because of his sudden reappearance. I don't think I'm coping with this as well as I thought I was, and I really cannot afford to fall weak again. So I'm taking the advice that most people here seem to have for me and looking into therapists. I think that'll be a good way to move forward and try to put this episode behind me, and it'll take up my time, but at least something productive will come out of it, and maybe I'll be able to stop overanalyzing and overthinking. Update 2. Hello. It's been 3 days since my last update, And today Peter sent me an email about why exactly he'd come back to us after so long. And I'm not gonna lie, it's messed up even by his standards. I don't know what kind of weird crap he and Mandy are up to, but I'm glad that I already spoke to my lawyer and are already ahead of him because a couple of things that he said were concerning, to say the least. In the email, he told me that after the divorce was finalized, Mandy told him that she didn't want him to be in touch with me anymore. So he gave up custody of his daughter and decided to focus on his married life. Now, the reason they'd broken up all those years back when they were in college was because she'd always been way too family-oriented and he wanted someone who had ambitions other than getting married and having kids. But both of them had changed over time, and once they reconciled a couple of years ago at the reunion, they realized that they'd messed up by breaking things off and started an affair. She dumped her then-boyfriend, and Peter claimed that he wanted to tell me, but by the time he'd mustered up the courage to confess, I was already pregnant. And the longer he postponed telling me, the more difficult it became, and with time, even Mandy had started feeling attached to our daughter. So it all got complicated for him, and he just let it continue that way for 3 years until it finally dawned upon him that what he was doing was messed up and that he needed to clean up his act, or else he'd end up living a lie for the rest of his life. So he told me, and then the divorce happened, and he ended up giving up custody of his daughter because he wanted to devote all his time to being a good husband to Mandy. Unfortunately, over time, they realized that Mandy still did want a family, but she was too old to conceive now without facing health complications during the pregnancy. And so, they decided that instead of trying to have a baby of their own, they could just ask me to let them co-parent the child that Peter already did have. And that's why he visited me that day. But when he realized that I wasn't going to be intimidated into handing over my daughter, he tried to take a much less threatening and much more manipulative route, which also didn't help much. So now his last option was to tell me the truth and hope that I'd understand where they were coming from. He told me that Mandy already felt like she'd been a mother to our daughter at some points when it was just the 3 of them and I wasn't at home, and she just wanted a chance to live that life once more, and I was the only person who could make it possible for them. And this was their plea to me to let them have the family that they'd always wanted, just for Mandy's sake. I mean, I've got to hand it to them. It really does take an insane amount of confidence and guts to send something like this to the woman whose life you messed up. They lied to me and cheated for 3 years, including a time when I was pregnant, and yet they expect me to be kind to them and think of them and let them build a relationship with the child they discarded like a toy less than a year ago because now they'd suddenly realized that Mandy was too old to have babies, but she still wanted a family. They could have done so many other things. Like, they could have chosen to adopt or to opt for surrogacy. But instead, they chose to do the least sane thing and tried to intimidate me into giving up a child they hadn't even cared about for several months until it occurred to them that we could share the child and the experience of parenthood. Like, this is my daughter here that we're talking about, and not an article of clothing or a toy that we can just pass around according to our convenience. I knew that both of them were crazy, but this is just way too much, even for Peter and Mandy. I'm glad I've already spoken to my lawyer and I've also forwarded that email to her because this is seriously insane. To even think that I'd agree to this under any circumstances is so ridiculous that I'm struggling to even wrap my head around it. It really does take a special kind of delusion to approach the woman you screwed over together and then make an absurd demand like the one they made. I'm just relieved that my daughter isn't yet old enough to make sense of these things because I don't think I would have been able to explain this to her. Let alone her. I can barely make sense of any of this myself. Had this been happening to someone else, I really would have just loved to know what exactly went through my husband's and Mandy's head while they were formulating their plans and strategies because I'm sure that's how they were treating this, like some military operation. It's positively absurd. But my current priority is making sure my daughter and I are both safe and all right because there's just no telling what these people might do next. I don't trust them one bit, and after this email, they've pretty much proven for sure that they don't even deserve to be trusted either. Update 3. My lawyer contacted Peter yesterday and told him that the petition to terminate his parental rights had already been filed and he needed to sign it soon, or else it would lead to another custody battle, and that would be unnecessary for everyone involved. Naturally, he didn't take that kindly, and today, a couple of hours back, both Peter and Mandy showed up at my parents' place while I was about to leave for work. I told them that they needed to stay off our property or else I'd call the police. So they did take several steps back out onto the street, but they were really stubborn, and Mandy said to me that what I was doing was going to destroy my daughter's future because everyone knew I wasn't capable of raising her by myself and by being egoistic, I was depriving her of her only chance to have a real family. I can't even put into words how wrong that was on so many levels and how offensive it was to me personally, because what was that even supposed to mean? I flared up at her and ended up screaming at her at the top of my lungs in retaliation because the things she was saying had gotten under my skin in the worst possible way. This woman was literally a home wrecker, so she, of all people, had no right to lecture me on what my daughter needed or what a family was. She was the one who'd ruined a perfectly happy family, and my husband had happily gone along with her, but now they were back to try and let them play happy family with my daughter. Even someone in an insane asylum would know how ridiculous that sounds. And I'm also fully capable of raising my daughter on my own because I have a job and make a decent amount of money, enough to live nicely and give my daughter the life that she deserves to have. So I'm not too worried about the financial part of it. As for my daughter's family, I think I'm enough for her at the moment, and in the future I might get married again and she'll have a father. But right now I'm literally all that she needs. And once again, they had cut this very same daughter off for almost a year because then they didn't think they wanted her. And now that they want her, I'm not good enough of a mother for her all of a sudden? I swear, both of these people are so stupid and delusional that it's painful for me to even think about it. I told them to leave because I was getting late for work, but Mandy decided to throw a tempered tantrum right there on the street, and I'm not even kidding. She actually just sat down on the street and told me that I couldn't leave unless I let her see my daughter once, and said that she wasn't going to move until I gave in to her demands. It was ridiculous, and I asked Peter to move her, but that fool sat down right beside her. Had I not been in such a foul mood, I probably would have cracked up. But thankfully, when my dad realized how exasperated I was, he decided to finally call the cops and have them removed forcefully. There was not much to do but wait while the cops drove down to our place. And even then, they kept arguing with us and threatened to protest against me because I was depriving my daughter of a happy life on purpose. It was that word, deprived, that kept triggering me because as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing my best for my daughter, and I'm sure when she grows up, she'll appreciate the fact that I didn't let her psycho dad take over her upbringing. And who's to say she'll be safe with him anyway? For all I know, they could literally abduct her and be off with her if they felt like it because I think they've proven that they have no concern for anyone else whatsoever. And I told him what I thought of them, but they were still adamant and told me that I was just keeping them apart because I had a personal vendetta against them. Which again, if someone had been in my place, then they probably would have felt the same way. They're the ones who ruined my personal life, so I think it's really fair and reasonable for me to have a personal vendetta against them. The arguing went on for a while until the police showed up and had them taken away, and even then, they refused to even act like they regretted their psychotic behavior and continued to threaten me, saying that they'd be back and that they wouldn't let me keep them away from their daughter anymore, which is just disturbing on another level altogether. But I did choose to stay home since I was feeling extra paranoid because of their behavior, and also decided to file for a restraining order today itself. I think that had been overdue because today they showed me just how crazy they could be when it came down to it. I was amused by their ridiculous behavior, but I won't lie, it was kind of scary as well. So I'm trying my best to get rid of them altogether, and also, I'm going to move to a new apartment soon enough because clearly none of my addresses that my husband knew of are going to feel safe anymore. Update 4. I've moved into a new apartment, and Peter thankfully has no idea where I live now. I've also managed to get a restraining order against him, and I now have full custody of my daughter. I have managed to keep my sanity intact during the past few weeks, and thankfully, I'm out of this nonsensical crap now. I don't know what Peter or Mandy are up to now, and I've also told my friends that I don't ever want to hear about them from them ever again, and neither do I want them to tell them anything about me. The past few weeks have been very tense for me because my ex-husband kept texting me and harassing me from multiple phone numbers on and off. And Mandy spread some nasty rumors about me. So I'm sure that the power couple was doing their best to bring me down. It didn't work, though, unfortunately, but whatever. I'm just done. My daughter is okay. I'm okay. And that's all that matters to me. I'm all the family she needs, and the same goes for me. Now on to the next story. Story 2. A month after Mom died, Dad married his mistress and moved her kids into our house. Now he expects me to give up my room and be their babysitter. Hi, I am here to know if what I have done is right by asking my father to move out of my house. For context, sometime after I turned 12, my parents got a divorce because my father was cheating on my mom with a much younger woman. I will call her Sarah since I don't want to use her real name. I remember the day vividly. When I came back home from school early, I had a half day and my mom had given me keys to her house so I could let myself in. We did have a babysitter, but she wasn't home yet, so I thought she was running late. I heard some noise from my parents' room and I got scared. I ran to get the phone to call 911 when I suddenly heard my dad's voice from upstairs. Curious, I went up to my parents' room to see my dad and this woman, Sarah, throwing their clothes back on. It was honestly scarring, and I gasped in shock audibly. They froze seeing my face. I ran out of there immediately and locked myself in my room. I burst into tears as my dad kept pleading with me outside my door to open up so he could apologize. He kept telling me to not tell my mom anything. Before I could say anything or react, I heard my mom yelling downstairs. I opened the door to see my mom standing in the doorway looking at my dad angrily. Apparently, the babysitter had canceled at the last minute, so my mom had rushed in from the office after taking a half day so I wouldn't be home alone. She had discovered Sarah trying to get into Dad's car outside and had put two and two together. My dad had driven them to the house thinking that nobody would be home at this time. When my mom noticed that I was home and had tears running down my face, she realized that I must have caught my dad and chewed my dad out. My dad kept apologizing and trying to justify how he didn't mean to hurt us. Despite all the yelling back and forth, my dad said he had to go and drop Sarah back at the office. My mom couldn't believe his words that, in the middle of our fight, he was going to walk off and drop his mistress. My mom told him that Sarah could take a cab, but my dad insisted, saying that he couldn't let her do that. My mom's eyes widened in shock upon hearing his words, and my dad left. This affair was very unexpected as my mom and dad had been together for a very long time. His mistress was a woman he worked with who was 20 years younger than him. I don't know what she wanted out of him, but I guess it was so important that she had to destroy our family over it. Over the days, through several fights, my dad eventually confessed to my mom that Sarah was pregnant. This was devastating for my mom to hear as my mom always had pregnancy-related issues and had miscarried twice after having me. He wanted Sarah to keep the child and had made up his mind about leaving us to start a family with him. This led to a nasty divorce between them. My dad tried to get a hefty alimony from my mom. You see, my mom comes from an affluent family, but my dad doesn't. In the divorce, my dad wanted our house and wanted to kick my mom out, but because he had cheated, he lost the battle. Throughout all this, my mom tried her best to shield me from what my dad was doing to her, but I was old enough to know what was happening. It was a really difficult time for me. Throughout the divorce, my dad never once apologized to my mom or me for what he had put us through. My mom didn't want to separate me from my dad, so she allowed him weekend visitation. After the divorce happened, my father moved out and started living with Sarah. In the beginning, my dad tried his best to visit me during the weekends. He tried to be sweet and spend time with me doing things that I loved. But as days passed, he started to smell of alcohol and I hated the nauseating smell. I remember once when we went to get ice cream, my dad fell asleep on the bench outside the shop. I was so scared that something had happened to him that I called my mom immediately. When she arrived, she could smell the alcohol in him like I did and realized quickly that he was too drunk to drive and had fallen asleep. She called Sarah from Dad's phone to come and pick him up and brought me back to the house. As you can imagine, my mom was royally pissed off at my dad for putting me through danger. My mom wanted me to have a good relationship with my father regardless of their divide. But for him to drink and drive had put not only him but me at risk. Later, when my dad was sober, he didn't even bother apologizing to my mom. He kept saying that he just wanted a nap and that wasn't a crime. My mom warned him to not drink on the days he had to come and see me, and my dad agreed. After this incident, I was scared to go anywhere with my dad. Although my dad kept his promise for a while, he slipped back into his old habits very soon. His drinking changed him. I quickly realized that my dad when he was drunk and my dad when he was sober were two very different people. I remember one summer weekend, which was my 14th birthday. It was my dad's weekend. My mom asked if she could have me for the weekend if she wanted to take me and my friend to a music event in the city. She knew I loved a particular singer and this singer was going to be performing at the event. Hence, she wanted to take me there as a birthday present. My dad refused, saying, "No way, this was his weekend." So off to Dad's place we went. His mistress didn't even acknowledge my birthday and ignored my presence as usual. I had gotten used to it by now. In the afternoon, my dad suddenly informed me that he was taking me to the music event. I knew he did it despite our mom, but I was beyond ecstatic as I was going to be watching my favorite singer perform live. My favorite singer was amazing and I was so happy to be there until he was done and it was some other band's turn. I was not interested in any other artist, so I went to find my dad. I found him in the drinking area, which was already a bad sign. We had driven to the event and he seemed pretty drunk already with more than a few beers. I asked him nicely if we could go home now. It had been a long day and I was tired. I didn't want to hear any more music, but my dad vehemently refused, saying that he paid for tickets, so he was going to listen to every band who was going to play in the event. I told my dad that I was really tired and my legs hurt from standing for so long, and he got angry and yelled at me that if I did not want to be here anymore, I should go and wait in his car and threw his keys at me. I did not argue because I knew how scary he was when he was drunk, and I was afraid of him then. So I went to the car. I was tired, upset, and terrified. I was a 14-year-old who was sitting alone in a lonely car in a bad part of the city after midnight because Dad did not want to pay for parking in safer areas near the concert. I wanted to go home and I needed to use the bathroom, but there wasn't any kid-friendly place open anymore at that time. I was afraid of getting kidnapped if I went out alone without my dad. My phone was also dead, so I could not call my mom for help. I sat there in the dark under the streetlights in Dad's car, scribbling on his post-it notes, waiting for him to come back. The night was getting chilly, but I didn't want to turn on his heat as I was afraid my dad might scold me later. After 3 hours of sitting alone, scared and tired, and holding back the urge to pee, my dad finally came. He was so drunk that he could not walk properly, and he had 2 complete strangers with him who also were very drunk. Dad said we were going to give them a ride home. I asked if it was okay for him to drive, and he yelled at me that of course it was okay for him to drive and I was extremely stupid to even ask him that. I sat silently after that as we drove the strangers to their homes. They played loud music throughout the drive. After we dropped them off, we pulled into a gas station. I finally went to the bathroom and then my dad bought me an iced tea. And then we talked. He told me that he was very disappointed in me that night. I looked at him surprised while sipping my iced tea. My dad continued to say how he wanted to give me a fun night on my birthday, but all I had done was complain to him the whole night. He told me that I had been a bad girl and he was ashamed of how he acted, but he had decided to forgive me if I spent the rest of the remaining weekend acting nicely to him and his mistress. He continued to tell me how he didn't want to tell my mom any of this as he didn't want her to punish me for my bad behavior that night. I was very naive back then and loved my dad. Hence, I genuinely thought that it was all my fault. I apologized and agreed to behave better so we didn't have to tell my mom about any of this. Even though it was one of the worst nights of my young life back then, now that I am older, I have realized that he gaslighted me and threatened me to be silent because if Mom had found out that he put my life at risk by leaving me alone in the car and driving drunk with me, she would have made sure that he would never see me again. As time passed, my dad slowly stopped calling me or replying to me. He continued to pay child support, but other than that, he never initiated any contact with me unless it wasn't his birthday. I remember once calling him on his birthday and Sarah picked up his call to tell me that I should stop nagging my father all the time with calls. She told me that my dad was spending time with his son, my stepbrother, these days so I shouldn't interfere in their lives anymore. Hearing her say this was heartbreaking to me. I was still a child who was just missing my dad, but somehow I was blamed for trying to meddle in his life by his affair partner. After that day, I never called. I did hear from our relatives that Sarah and he went on to have another child, but I never stayed in touch with him throughout all this. I am now 17 years old and recently lost my mother around a month ago in what could be the most horrible experience of my life. I spent a month and a half in a hospital taking care of her, only to lose her in the end. This is an experience I will never forget, and it has scarred me for the rest of my life. Since I had a very close relationship with my mom, I resented my dad because of the heartache he caused my mother, and I blamed him for her death. After Mom's funeral, I refused to talk to him initially, but my dad kept begging me to allow him back into my life. We were then informed by our mom's lawyer that she had left all her assets to me, which meant that our family home now belonged to me. Because I am 17, I was still not of legal age, so I could not live on my own without the permission of my dad. This meant that Dad had to move back in with me along with his family. He seemed enthusiastic about the idea and readily agreed. My aunt decided to stay with me for the time being at the place until my dad could move in. Just 2 days after my mom's funeral, while I was still grieving, my dad informed me that he and Sarah had gotten engaged. He continued to tell me that he wanted to let me know first before he shared the news with everyone, as I was going to have a new mother. I was shocked beyond words, and for a minute or two, I couldn't even comprehend what he was saying. My dad kept telling me how he was excited to move into Mom's place where his children could finally live in a big house. I was confused and asked him why he was telling me all this when I was still grieving Mom. He told me that he was doing this for me so we could now be one big happy family. I burst into tears and cut his calls. I cried so much that I had puffy eyes the whole day. I didn't understand why my dad was doing all this. Last week, they had an engagement party where they invited some of our relatives and friends. During the toast, Dad said something like, "I just can't wait to marry the perfect woman. I thank God for giving me the love of my life after all those years that I wasted with someone else." I walked out of the room after hearing what my father said. He basically considered his marriage to my late mother a waste of his time. It broke my heart and I wanted to leave right away, but Dad's friend and Sarah followed me. Sarah started telling me that I shouldn't leave as people in the party might question my dad, but I told her I couldn't sit through this and I needed to go as I felt sick. Dad's friend tried to convince me to stay and say a few words about his engagement. I kept refusing and got tired of holding my anger in, so I just said, "I have no good words to say about my cheating father and his mistress. I need to go." Sarah got angry with me and called me a hole and told me that I needed to get over the past. I didn't even say anything and just left them behind. This weekend, my dad and his mistress got married in Vegas. They posted photos all over social media, and that is how I found out. I couldn't believe how cruel my father was to get married just 1 month after my mom passed away. My dad called me yesterday telling me that they were on their way to move into the place. He asked me to not cry in front of his kids, as he didn't want to make them feel sad or uncomfortable. Apparently, his stepkids meant more to him than me or my emotions. I watched my mom's house get filled with their things as the packers and movers delivered their stuff. My dad and Sarah walked through the house, with Sarah leaving commentaries about what needed to be changed in the house. She also took down pictures of my mom throughout the house and put them in the garage. I have recovered them and put them under my bed for the time being. Yesterday night, we had our first dinner together. It was extremely uncomfortable for me, to say the least. I couldn't believe that my life was such a mess where I was stuck with my dad and his wife and their 2 kids who had toys strewn everywhere around the house. After dinner, Dad informed me that we needed to talk with a very serious face. Dad told me that the house had only 3 rooms, which meant that it couldn't accommodate all of us unless we were willing to compromise. He then told me that he and Sarah had given this a lot of thought and had decided that they didn't want their kids to share a room as they wanted to give them their privacy. My brows furrowed in confusion, and I told my dad that other than the master bedroom and guest bedroom, the last remaining room belonged to me. This is when my dad informed me that he wanted me to move out of my room so his older son could have it. My eyes darted from my dad's face to Sarah in confusion as I struggled to understand what he was trying to imply. I asked him if he was serious, and Sarah interjected, replying that I was 17, so I didn't really need a room of my own while her 2 children were still growing and needed to have their own independence. My dad nodded in agreement and told me that as his oldest child, I needed to step up and help take care of his kids, aka my new stepbrothers. I immediately started saying how ridiculous this was and yelling at him that this was extremely unfair. I told him that I wasn't going to live out of my bedroom just because he wanted his children to have separate rooms, and went on to tell him that they could always share a room. Hearing this, Sarah yelled back that I was being selfish and I should learn to sacrifice for my family. I scoffed hearing her and told her that she was the selfish person who had come into our lives and ruined them. Sarah retorted that I should appreciate the fact that they had moved into this place to take care of me and not make this such a big deal. My dad told me angrily that I was not allowed to speak to Sarah this way. If I wanted to continue living in this house, he reminded me that I was 17 and still a child under his care, so I needed to listen to him. He continued to tell me that I needed to follow their rules from now on, even if I didn't like them, starting with moving out of my room and crashing in the living room. He told me that I was old enough to take care of his stepkids and he didn't want to waste his money on babysitters anymore. I started to protest again, but he firmly told me that I was welcome to run away and sleep on the footpath if I didn't follow his rules. I started to cry in anger and ran into my room while he and Sarah continued to yell at how immature I was. I'm torn. Reddit. On the one hand, I don't want to be the Grinch, but on the other, it's my home too. I don't know if I should put my foot down and refuse to play babysitter in my living room, or should I suck it up and embrace the chaos? Help me out here, guys. Update 1. Thank you everyone for your support. I am grateful that a lot of you have left a positive comment on my post. For those of you telling me to leave my house and move in with my aunt, although I think that's a good idea, I don't know if my dad will allow me. I also don't want to give up my room or this house because it has so many memories of my mom. It's unfair that I would have to move out of a place where my mom would have wanted me to stay. It breaks my heart to know that my dad doesn't even care about how I feel. It's just been a month of losing my mom and I am now being asked to sleep on the couch. I am probably going to cry myself to sleep tonight and will face this in the morning with a fresh mindset. I am too tired tonight to discuss this any further. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update. A lot has happened since then. For starters, after that night, I told my aunt everything about what had happened between me and my dad. She was shocked to hear the way my dad and Sarah had behaved with me. I told her how low I was feeling and how I couldn't take it anymore. My aunt, concerned about my well-being, immediately pulled up to our house to confront them. My dad was shocked to see her show up at our doorstep. She sat everyone down in the living room and spoke with a gentle but firm tone, emphasizing the emotional turmoil I was experiencing after my mother's recent passing. The conversation went something like this. Aunt, I understand these are challenging times for everyone, but I'm worried about Lisa, my name. Losing her mother and adjusting to this new family dynamic is a lot to handle. Can we talk about why you are making this transition even harder for her by threatening her? Dad, I am her guardian and I make the rules. She needs to learn to adapt to live with us. Life doesn't stop just because her mother is dead, and I can't coddle her forever. This is my decision for our family, and I expect her to fall in line. Aunt. And consider how quickly everything has happened and the impact it has had on her. You have moved into the house and are asking her to give up her room just because you are her guardian currently. What happens 1 year later when she is finally able to inherit this house? My dad's eyes widened in shock upon hearing her words. Sarah. Dad, this is my house now and I won't let her dictate how things will be in my own house. She's a child and she needs to understand that this is how it's going to be. Aunt. She has been crying since yesterday after your conversation, and sadly, you won't see the pain you are causing your daughter if you continue down this path. I will help her file a lawsuit against you for mentally torturing her at her own home. My dad, initially defensive, gradually realized the gravity of the situation as my aunt continued to threaten, telling him that she had more than enough money to come after him. He took a moment to absorb her words and began to see the situation from a different perspective. Dad, fine. She can keep her room, but I expect her to help us out with babysitting my kids sometimes. Sarah and my dad looked at my aunt, wide-eyed, who went on to tell them that she was going to involve their entire family and reveal to everyone about what they had done to me. Dad and Sarah must have finally realized that they could not do anything anymore. My dad, reflecting on your aunt's words, recognized the need for a more compassionate approach. Dad, you're right. I need to talk to her and find a way to make things more bearable. I won't ask her to give up her room or take care of her step-siblings. After the conversation, the tension in the house eased a bit, and my aunt's intervention played a crucial role in ensuring your living situation became more manageable. My aunt has promised me to call her if my dad or Sarah went back on their word. I am a bit sad that it took my aunt intervening in our lives for my dad to understand the implications of his actions. If my aunt hadn't come to help me out, I would probably have been sleeping in the living room by now. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update. After my aunt's intervention and a series of discussions, a more empathetic approach has been adopted in your new family dynamic. Slowly over time, the tension has eased and a new understanding has been developed. My dad and I have found common ground, fostering an environment where my feelings are considered. He is perhaps still afraid of my aunt and has not made my life any more difficult. Sarah, on the other hand, has refused to acknowledge me if my dad isn't around. She clearly resents me but doesn't cause trouble, so I will let her behavior slide. Gradually, some compromises have been made. I have joined therapy to deal with my grief, which has helped me to express myself better. This has made me realize the extent to which my dad has emotionally abused me over the years. Regardless of his supposed changed behavior over the 2 months, I can't wait to turn 18 so I can take back my house. I might not be cruel to them as they were to me, but I will be definitely asking them to move out so I can continue to live in my mom's house on my own, cherishing her memories. While challenges may still arise, I am committed to facing them and staying strong like my mom. My aunt and the rest of her family continue to show their support, and I know they will always be there for me. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Fiancé got mad when his boss gave him an award at work, told him to never give him one again, then lost his promotion. Now he's living on our couch and wants to sue the company. Hey guys, long-time lurker in need of some advice. My fiancé was recommended SLG. Assuming this is an abbreviation the user used, given a training assignment some months back for a vacancy that would be opening, and he showed me a review at the end that he received where he received great remarks. However, to his surprise, he wasn't given the position, and he was the only person training for it. He's been feeling down the past couple of days, but he also told me something that I didn't know. A few weeks back, he was given an award in a meeting that he returned to his boss, same boss who recommended him for the vacancy, because he doesn't like awards and he never told me about it either. He also told his boss he didn't appreciate being blindsided, and he admitted he was emotionally stressed from the meeting when he talked to him the same day. He also told him to never give him an award again, and he thinks that that's the reason he didn't get the promotion. When I asked why he didn't tell me about it, he said that work was his space and that it didn't concern me, and that honestly hurt. He also said he's thinking about leaving the company, and he's been there since he interned in college. My mom said to suggest that he talk to a professional about why he was bothered by the award SLR, assuming this is another abbreviation relationship, but Dad said I should reconsider because he created a fan to walk into that hurt his career. I want to see if he'll talk to a professional before reconsidering, but Dad said I shouldn't even give him a chance. I believe I'm making the right decision by seeing if he's open to it, not just for job stuff but also for our relationship, but I want to ask if I'm going about it correctly. Date 1. Before suggesting therapy, I asked him to further explain why he returned the award when everything seemed to be going well for him. And I want to remind you that he showed me a written review of his training assignment that he worked for a few months that came back with great remarks, albeit nothing about returning the reward that had nothing to do with it. He said that he viewed work awards similar to participation trophies that he wanted no part of, but when I asked if his reward was that, he said it was a certificate recognizing him for his work along with training SL, assuming another abbreviation, assisting others when his boss asked him to sometimes, mostly on computer when someone didn't know how to do something, so he'd show them over Microsoft Teams. He specifically said it wasn't a participation award, but that he viewed all rewards the same. He also said it'd make it awkward when he helped people in the future because awards make people seem less genuine and that returning it showed he was down to earth. When I asked why he couldn't just accept the reward and do whatever he wanted with it at home, he said it was a gesture to show he wasn't a management suck-up and that he'd be the same person after getting promoted. He also said he saw someone lose friends at work after crossing over to management side because it was an us versus them mentality, and he compared his gesture to the person who rejected the Nobel Peace Prize that he heard referenced in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. However, he knew nothing about it besides the reference because he loves Marvel movies and didn't even know the guy's name. But when I asked if he regretted it since everything seemed to go well with his training before the issue he likely made for himself, he said he was considering suing the company because he was treated unfairly, and he wasn't open to therapy because he did nothing wrong. When I told him that it hurt when he said that his work life didn't concern me, he said there were many things he said at work that I wouldn't approve of, but that it was his space just like managers who talk behind coworkers' backs. But when I reminded him that we were engaged and incomparable to a coworker/manager relationship, he said I wasn't supporting him and didn't want couples counseling either. And that's pretty much how it went. The reason I spoke to my parents before we talked was because of an idea he floated in my first post that I didn't mention, and I want to explain it because some said I threw him under the bus to my parents, so I'll explain why. He said he was considering working a retail job in the meantime after quitting because he thinks he hit a dead end, and he said he'd be more respected there too. The other reason I told my parents was because we were looking at a home to buy, but those plans have changed, and he wants to stay in our apartment, and that was before he mentioned anything about suing the company. He said he didn't mind making less if it meant having more respect, and I was willing to try and work things out if he considered therapy or couples counseling. But now that he's refused and doubled down, I told him that I'm reconsidering, and he didn't like that and said I wasn't on his side like his boss. Same boss who recommended him for the vacancy and gave him the award, and has been distant since. He slept by himself on the couch and even ate dinner on his own the past few nights, and I'm trying to see if my parents can let me bring some stuff to their place come Friday. I feel like he threw everything away for no reason. Got a great review on his training and made an issue out of nothing when there was none. Learning about everything he kept from me still hurts, and I might try to talk to someone myself, but it really hurts because he basically said I never knew him at work, and maybe that's just how he is when he's not with me. This idea to reject the award came from Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and the guy who was referenced in the movie for rejecting the Nobel Peace Prize, from what he told me, but he didn't even know the guy's name or anything beyond it came from the movie because he's a big Marvel fan. He also said it was a selfless thing to do and showed he wasn't a management/award suck-up to his coworkers who'd appreciate a down-to-earth manager when he crossed over into management. He also said it was something selfless Captain America would do. He said he wants to sue because he was wrongfully removed from consideration for the position for personally not liking awards despite a great written review on his training assignment, and that it would help fellow employees who felt pressured to take management awards to move up because he believes that all awards are participation trophies. As a result of trying to talk to him and see if he'd be interested in couples therapy, he refused to think that he did anything wrong and still plans to sue, and I based my reconsidering of the relationship on his willingness to get counseling. I will be trying to move everything to my parents on Friday, but he's been treating me as if I don't exist because he knows that I'm done. He's eaten dinner alone, slept alone, and barely says a word to me anymore because I'm attacking him like his boss, so I'm just trying to get to Friday, but it's been hard because he's turned on me. Update 2. Returning to this because a lot of people reached out and were helpful, and I appreciate everyone who did. I'm currently at my parents', and my ex-fiancé was pestering me to move everything to their home before Friday when I eventually did, and it was really stressful. However, he did something that I didn't expect before I moved on Friday that I'm still dealing with, and a lot of friends and family know about it now because of what he did before I got around to telling them. He made a Facebook post that was pretty long and he posted it to Twitter too. Long story short, he addressed the coworkers about what happened with his promotion and said that many of them were likely wondering what had happened and that he wanted to explain his side before the wrong people did. He wrote that his boss has wrongfully rescinded the promotion because he told his boss that he didn't like awards, and he included the manager's name. He wrote about his conversation with his boss and how he respectfully spoke to him in his office instead of refusing the award at the meeting because he wanted to show respect. He also said that his manager previously knew about his anxiety surrounding awards and chose to give it to him anyway when he knew it would hurt his focus, but he never once mentioned anything about anxiety to me. He never mentioned anxiety in the past, and he never mentioned that he spoke to his boss about anxiety too. He also left out what he told me about how he was emotional when he spoke to his boss and said some things he probably shouldn't have. He left out the part about being blindsided by the award and, "Don't ever give me any awards again." And my dad thinks he's lying about having talked to his boss about anxiety to look like a martyr. He thinks he made it up to draw pity, and the rest of his post made him think that too. When he wrote about how he was going to sue the company, he said he was doing it for others who may feel pressured to take awards in order to move up and that he was fighting for them. He said it was unfair of his boss to refuse him for mental health reasons he knew beforehand, and he wanted to pave the way for others with mental health challenges. He also said he was inspired by NBA player Kyrie Irving, he's also a basketball fan, who refused to get vaccinated and sacrificed salary, SL. Assuming another abbreviation, backlash. The Brooklyn Nets didn't allow him to play for many games due to being unvaccinated. To be a voice for the voiceless for other people who didn't want to be vaccinated. And while he disagreed with Kyrie's stance on vaccinations, we are both vaccinated. He admired how he fought and forced the Brooklyn Nets to play him and cave as they struggled in the standing, SL. Assuming another abbreviation, injuries, and showed that corporations would eventually cave to employees like Kyrie. My ex-fiancé said he wanted to be a voice for the voiceless who felt pressured to accept awards to move up at his job. He also said he wanted to make management cave to him, and that was the reason he was suing for the employees. He also wrote that I had broken up with him because I didn't support his mental health condition just like his boss, but he never once mentioned anything related to mental health to me ever. Heck, he left out all the details about how he told his boss off, and my dad said he might be making it up to create a case when he knows he has none or just wants to smear the company. Dad has also begun calling him the fake Captain America from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and he showed me some clips about the TV show when I asked what he meant. Going back to my ex-fiancé, he also wrote he was glad to find out I didn't support mental health before we had kids, which really surprised me because I suggested couples counseling together, but he told me he didn't need it because he did nothing wrong. He also wrote that I refused to have sex, assuming another abbreviation, sleep together after he opened up about his anxiety when he was the one who opted to sleep away from me on the couch after he accused me of not supporting him like his boss. He also said he was talking to someone he knew who was a union shop steward for advice, and he said there'd be more in the future. A lot of friends and relatives called me and my parents in the aftermath of his post, mostly those who saw the Facebook one I was tagged in, and my parents and I have been telling them our side. I also received DMs from people telling me off for not supporting his mental health, who I'm guessing are his friends, and some of them were really vulgar too. That only happened on my Instagram, and I've blocked a lot of them since because I didn't know them, but it's been stressful after he tagged me in his post, and I'm honestly tired of repeating myself to everyone. However, I don't believe in engaging him/drama on social media, so I've continued to explain to everyone who's reached out with the help of my parents. The other thing that sucks is how he called my job after I moved out and told them that I said a lot of awful things about him about his mental conditions, which wasn't true. And while I don't think it'll amount to anything, I had to speak with HR about it, which surprised me. Dad doesn't think anything will come from it either, but he's been livid, and I am honestly too. Dad has also suggested a lawyer after how he called my job, and it's something we're investigating for maybe defamation. Don't know if that's the proper term, but maybe something in the ballpark of what he's doing. I just hope he stops, but he doesn't seem to be from his post and calling my job, and he said that there'd be more to come too. I just hope he stops with me at the least because I could care less if he wants to sue on his own, but we will see what Dad and I come up with on a lawyer. Edit. I want to clarify something that many people seemed unsure about. Some people asked if he was really in the running for a promotion or had made it up. I saw a physical review that he brought home detailing the training assignment and the scores for the duties he performed when it was done, and it was related to the position he was training for. The scores were really, really good, and he had no negative marks about the training. Returning the award was unrelated to the training. His manager also took him out to dinner a few weeks before he returned the reward in regards to the promotion too. I also saw some confusion about when my ex-fiancé returned the award, and many asked if he returned it during the meeting to make a statement to his coworkers. He returned it after the meeting and after spending time at his desk where he said he was uneasy, and that led him to go to his manager's office where he told him to never give him an award again. In regards to how he showed his coworkers he wasn't a suck-up, he said he told them in passing in the days after he returned it to his boss. The award had nothing to do with the promotion he was training for and wasn't a certificate needed for it. The award was given for how he helped others on Microsoft Teams through screen sharing when his boss asked him to assist others many times, and it wasn't related to his training assignment. Update 3. This will probably be my last update for a while, so I decided to make it an edit instead since it seems I've surpassed the amount of updates I can have on some subreddits. My dad was able to get in touch with a lawyer, and he agreed with the suggestion that many gave to send a cease and desist letter to my ex, we'll call him Nate, specifically for contacting my job along with posting slagging me on his social media rants. We are considering other action too, but I wanted to touch on that because many suggested it. Things have also quieted down at my job since HR called me in to talk about how Nate called them, and we had another meeting too. Long story short, I gave them the full picture, and they agree that he was being vindictive. I also showed them the social media rant he made, and that cemented just how delusional he was. However, Dad suggested something else too. He suggested that I call my ex's company to see if I could speak to someone there, and I was able to speak with Nate's manager after explaining who I was to someone else. He ended up calling me back on the same day, and I told him that I just wanted to ask about a few things. I told him, we'll call him John, about how Nate had become my ex after his Facebook rant, and he said he saw it too from an employee who showed him. I also told him about how he contacted my job too. When I asked about the promotion that Nate was training for, he confirmed it was real and that Nate was the only candidate, and he opened up about his decision to recommend him. He said he saw potential in Nate since he started working there in college as an intern, and he called him a hard worker too. He was younger then, but he tried to support him. He gave him extra work that resulted in more hours when he wanted more in his early days, and he also helped him become full-time too. He said he was smart, honors in high school and college, and it showed at work too. He also said Nate used to be humble and appreciative, but that he let it get to his head somewhere along the way. His annual reviews were among the best, and he recommended him for the vacancy that was opening up because he thought he'd do well. He called him into the office and told him that he wanted to offer him training for the vacancy, and it would have come with a nice raise too. They wanted to hire within, and he wanted to reward him for his hard work. There was no applying for the vacancy at all. He asked if he was interested, and he said that he was, and he began training shortly after. The training lasted a few months, but he said he aced it. When I told him that he showed me the review of his training, he said it was true and that he did well. But when it came to the award, he got too buddy-buddy with how he talked to him, and he told me some things that I didn't know. My ex told me that the award was for helping people through Microsoft Teams through screen sharing, but he received it for more than just that. He would stay late to help people with assignments that were not his responsibility, and he helped someone meet a deadline by staying late when it would have been late otherwise. In regards to the award, he received a certificate along with PTO during a meeting, and John said he shyly accepted it. However, sometime after the meeting on that same day, Nate went to his office and was unlike himself, but when John asked if something was wrong, Nate went off the rails and looked stressed. When I asked if Nate told him to never give him an award again, he confirmed that he did, along with a blindsiding comment. He also raised his voice and used some profanity, and when John tried to calm him down, he wouldn't have it. He stormed out of the office and left the award there. But when his boss tried to find him a few minutes later, he found that he had left almost an hour earlier than he should have clocked out. He tried to call him to see if he was all right, but he didn't answer 2 consecutive calls, and I had no clue about him leaving early. When he came in the next day, his boss went to his cubicle and asked if everything was all right, but when he asked if they could talk in his office, Nate refused and said there was nothing to talk about. But when John said he wanted to make sure he was fine, he cursed at him from his cubicle, and others heard it too. So while his training review came back sensational, John said that effectively ended his chances for the promotion because he was done with him. He tried to be reasonable and gave him a chance to explain himself instead of getting on him for leaving early, but he spat in his face. He didn't tell HR about how he returned the award the day before because he wanted to give him a chance and felt that he might have triggered some trauma, but when he cursed at him the following day, that was it. He told his manager/HR everything that happened and said he was wrong about him and wasn't mature enough, and he said it hurt because he put himself out on a limb to recommend him when other managers wanted to hire someone older. Throughout our conversation, he kept saying that he was a good kid and that he saw himself in him, but the more he thought about it, he said he might have a silver spoon growing up because he never learned how to be personable during stress, which was essential for management. To his last point, my dad agreed with his assumption of Nate, honor society in high school/college, along with the dean's list too. His parents didn't require him to work. When he worked retail, he wanted to work because his friends were going to work there as long as his grades were good. His parents paid for gas, bought him a car, never requested for him to work, and paid for college too. I paid for my own college and took semesters off because I couldn't always afford it with fluctuating hours. But when people asked how I didn't see this side of him, he was always nice when things were going well, and his boss said so too. Giving him the award triggered something, and he wasn't mature enough to have a conversation about it. Nate would often surprise me with flowers, SL, assuming another abbreviation, other gifts, and we'd watch movies, SL, assuming another abbreviation, have fun. But when he became stressed with the award, his immaturity showed when he accused me of taking his manager's side and began to treat me differently. My dad said that everything at work had gone right for him leading up to the award, but that moment probably triggered something and showed he wasn't reliable when hit the fan because it was everyone else's fault. He also didn't blame me for not seeing it sooner because he was probably spoiled and protected by his parents at every turn. He also said that John didn't see it either after working with Nate for almost 5 years until getting triggered. I still blame myself for not seeing it sooner, but this was the first time I've seen him really bothered by something that wasn't even bad. The award was a good thing, but it is what it is. He made another post talking about a live stream he was going to do alongside a shop steward, but I won't address it in this update because it's getting too long. We're working on the cease and desist letter, and that is the first step right now. I appreciate everyone who reached out. It's been a lot having to explain to friends/family who saw me tagged in his original rant, but taking things one day at a time because what else can you do? Now on to the next story. Story 4. Made an innocent joke at the pool about a kid looking like me. So she showed up at my house at 7 a.m. to tell me she had been secretly in love with me for 15 years. So, me and my wife have a 5-year-old son. Our group of friends is mostly couples with kids, as we are nearing our 40s. And so, a lot of our meetings with friends now include meeting up as entire families, kids included. This can sometimes mean a lot of adults and a lot of kids. One person in this group, Emma, fake name used to be my roommate in college. She was married and has her own kids, and we hang out with her and her husband sometimes in a group setting, but rarely on our own. Emma also tends to run late often. This is all relevant to the story. As our son is an only child, we sometimes worry that he wouldn't really learn to share or get along with other kids. To prevent this, and while I love spending time with him, I would sometimes preemptively nudge him to engage with other kids when we are in public playgrounds or at the beach or the pool. To that end, when I buy him a water pistol or an RC car or the like, I'd often just buy 2 or 3. I'd get to the playground and play with him, and when another kid would show interest in the toys, I'd just go, "Oh, you want to play with us?" and hand him the remote or the pistol or the whatever, thus getting the kids to play. This works great quite often, and I have a generally good relationship with the parents at our neighborhood. This is also relevant. One day, like a year back, me and my wife were planning on taking our kid to the pool. I packed my large bag of pool toys. Emma texts me. Her husband is away the day, and she's looking for something to do with the kids. I talk to my wife and tell Emma we're going to our local pool and she's welcome to join us, but we're planning on heading there early, so she can just join us whenever. We arrive at the pool pretty early and get a really good spot poolside right by the shallows. I grab some water pistols and me and my kids start playing world domination. I am trying to take over the world and can only be stopped through the power of water pistols. It's a whole thing. Kid loves it. Soon another kid is there. It's a kid from my son's kindergarten class. He's there with his mom. He is, of course, welcome to join us. We know the family. The mom and my wife are pretty friendly and our kids play together often. So, my wife says she wants to go for a swim and the kid's mom says she wants to join her and asks me if I'm okay watching the kids. I say sure, since by this point the kids are blasting each other with water pistols and I'm just chilling poolside, just occasionally having to call out, "Oh no, my plans for world domination ruined," because sometimes that's just what parenting is. Then Emma and her kids show up. She is really happy to see me and I give out toys to her kids. All is going well. Then my son's friend runs up and asks for some other toy and I go, "Sure thing," and hand it to him. Emma goes, "Oh my God, so cute. He looks just like you." I laugh and say, "Okay, cool, but this isn't my kid." Now, in her defense, the kid does look kind of like me, making this kind of hilarious. When my wife and the kid's mom come back, I tell them this story. They also find it hilarious. We all have a friendly chuckle but think little of it. Fast forward to a few months ago. I haven't seen Emma in a while. We are at a friends group gathering and it was a good time all around. When we're about to call it a day, me and Emma are at the entrance. She's grabbing her stuff and I'm on my second trip from the car. Kids' toys, kids' clothes, dirty dishes, Tupperware with leftovers I want, etc. And I call out to Emma's husband, "Hey, can you call my wife and kid over? Just make sure it's actually my kid and not some random kid who kind of looks like me." I think it's a hilarious callback. He seems confused and kind of angry. He asks what the hell I'm talking about. Why would he call a random kid? I'm also confused, so I tell him the pool story. He doesn't laugh. Emma doesn't laugh either. The entire thing now feels kind of awkward. I awkwardly say goodbye, go grab my wife and kid myself, and we leave. Later that day, I text Emma to ask if everything is all right. I get no reply. I text again a few days later, no reply. I get the distinct sense I messed up, but also, if she doesn't want to talk to me, I'm not going to force the issue. I leave well enough alone. At worst, I thought she was mad at a joke I made, which was apparently in poor taste. Boy howdy, did I underestimate the fallout of this joke. A few days ago, I arrive at a friend's place and she's there. This is an engagement party, so no kids. I wasn't supposed to come but decided the last minute, and my wife was at home with our kid. Emma sees me and is livid. She wasn't expecting to. She only came because she thought I wouldn't be here. She does, however, take the opportunity to tear me a new one, though. She calls me out in front of everyone because of my joke, originally said with air quotes. Her husband was furious. From what she said and what I gathered from mutual friends afterwards, she previously commented on someone else's kid looking like someone who wasn't his father. Except that whole thing led to family drama in Emma's husband's family because in that case, that dude was cheating and that was his kid and a whole bunch of people were really hurt in the aftermath. Emma's husband was furious because he apparently thought she would know better than to comment on kids looking like people again. This sent them down a spiral, especially because the husband apparently thought she told me that other family story and that I was mocking him for his family drama, and he thought the story I told was just covering for her. When I realized I messed up, this was not the case. I had no idea that whole thing happened. Still, he didn't believe Emma when she told him, so they are now separated. She calls me an a-hole and says I ruined her marriage. I am not a confrontational person. I apologize profusely. I say I didn't know, and if she didn't want me telling the story, she should have said something. She tells me I'm making excuses. This is now a scene. I apologize profusely again and leave quickly after telling the couple of quick congratulations. I am later told this was anything anyone could talk about at the party, and now the engaged couple are mad at me too. Emma is even more mad because now everyone knows her drama. I am unfriended and unfollowed on everything. Some friends think I couldn't have known better and the joke was pretty benign. Other friends say it was in really poor taste to throw her under the bus, and I am totally the a-hole. Emma's best friend, who I also know from college, thinks I did know about the thing with her husband and now I'm just covering my own ass to get away with being cruel. It has been a few days and some of my friends will no longer talk to me. Others think she is wrong to blame me and that marriage was doomed anyway. Still, I feel really guilty about making the joke and I obviously wouldn't have made it had I known the trouble it would cause. I like Emma and I didn't want to hurt her. I also liked her husband. I'd like to say that maybe he was wrong to let the marriage implode like that because of a stupid joke. But at the same time, I don't exactly know his family drama and their history, nor the specifics of his relationship with Emma, so I can't really say he's wrong or overreacting. The entire thing just kind of sucks. My wife sort of got my back though. She thinks the joke was hilarious and actually thinks me breaking up their marriage makes it even funnier because WTF? She also loves crazy Reddit stories, so she sent me to post this, so at least I got that going for me, which is nice. So, edit to add comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. Not the a-hole. It sounds like she's being blamed for someone else's infidelity, and her whole in-law family has gaslight her. I actually kind of feel bad for her. P. I haven't actually thought of that. That entire thing must be really hard on her. I will try talking to her again in a few days, try to clear the air again because she is a friend, and she is clearly going through stuff. Like, I'm not super thrilled about how she called me out at the party, but at the same time I do know I've known her for over 15 years. Commenter 2. Info. I'm curious if you reached out to the husband to try and explain, especially considering how everyone in your group is supposed to be friends. And if you did reach out to him, what did he say? OP. I did not and probably will not since he and I were never really close like that. I liked him well enough, but he wasn't really the friendliest guy, at least with me. Commenter 3. NTA. Emma's husband wanted an out and you gave him one. It wasn't your fault and you shouldn't have even apologized. There was nothing wrong with your joke. Honestly though, your friend group sounds like it thrives on drama and you're probably better off not being friends with the people who took Emma's side. Commenter 4. NTA at all, and I love how she freaks out on you and publicly airs her dirty laundry, then blames you for everyone learning about the situation. SHE blurted out. Update 1. October 19th, 2024. I am now updating you because the last few hours have been a lot. Turns out that when I wrote my post, I left out one critical piece of context. I thought I was a regular person living a normal life. Turns out, I am Chaz, a side character on the worst Gossip Girl episode ever written. So, after posting yesterday, reading replies and thinking it over, I decided to reach out to Emma one final time. Some of you thought I shouldn't and that these were in fact not my monkeys. Others made me realize that Emma was probably in a shitty situation with her husband and his family and was actively being gaslit. Now, of note here, while as I mentioned, we're not as close as we used to be very close. She helped me pick out a spot and let me borrow her car for my first date with who later became my wife. She was a significant part of my support system during some very rough times in my life. Despite everything, I still felt like I cared about her and wanted to work things out. This is no longer the case. See, from my perspective, I thought we were good friends. Then when she met her husband, we naturally drifted apart, and then this thing happened out of nowhere. This was not what it looked like from her perspective. How do I know? Well, buckle up, because this is absolutely unhinged. So last night, before going to bed, I text her a long, thoughtful message. I explained that I do apologize for the part one played in ruining her marriage, and I understand she is going through a tough time. I understand if she wants nothing more to do with me, but if and when she feels she wants to talk it out, she is welcome to reach out and I leave the ball in her court. I show this to my wife and she is practically giddy. She tells me there is no way this doesn't blow up in my face and I should have just cut my losses like many of y'all said. Emma shows up at my house at around 7 a.m., unannounced. I ask WTF? She says she really needs to talk to me. I call my wife to the door and explain this. She sends me off with this woman because she understands this can only go poorly and apparently she is here for it and it's my own fault at this point. So, as I said, from my perspective we were friends, we drifted apart. From her perspective, for the last 15 years, she has been playing some weird game of 4D chess. Or two different games of 4D chess, apparently. She had feelings for me back in college and she was trying to nice girl her way into a relationship with me by being there for me when my dad died and when I was struggling with being single. She always gave everything because she just assumed I would at some point come around. You'd think that me getting married or her getting married would change that, and it did, just badly. Apparently, her husband knew about her feelings, which is why he always kept me at a distance. We never drifted apart. He explicitly asked her not to meet with me anymore outside of large social gatherings. That day at the pool? Yeah, that was her sticking it to him because he was away, cheating on her or something, and he didn't like her hanging around me scantily clad. It wasn't just that he was upset at the joke. He was upset because apparently I was having an affair with his wife and rubbing it in his face. Makes no sense, I know. It gets worse. That thing at the wedding? Well, at least she didn't plan that. I told our friends getting engaged that I wasn't coming. She asked and verified this. She wasn't expecting to see me, and they told her I wouldn't be there. But once I showed up, she decided to exploit it. She intended to have a huge scene with me so that she could tell her estranged husband and friends that I ambushed her because she broke off our affair. Our affair? Apparently, we had an affair. Oh, what affair is that, you ask? I did too. Apparently, the story some people got was that she and I were having an affair and it ended and I was stalking her. Her husband left her because he found out. So, people more inclined to believe her just thought that was what happened and wanted nothing to do with me anymore. So why did her husband actually leave? Well, some of you called it. According to her, he was cheating on her a bunch and overall not a nice person. She never actually cheated on him, but used me to pretend that she did without my knowledge. So after the joke at the gathering, which may have indeed been in poor taste, they had a huge fight and he left the house. As for the thing with his family, from what I gather, it was some dude sleeping with his cousin's wife or some such. So anyway, she tells me all this insanity and tops it off with, my message really moved her and we can still be friends. The reason she rushed to show up at 7 a.m.? My message made her realize I'm actually the only one who really cares about her and everyone else in her life is fake and don't really care. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but now this sounds like some really manipulative stuff to me. And now I'm thinking back to a lot of our previous interactions and a lot of them also seem like that to me now. I am not a confrontational person. I was willing to accept that I messed up. Maybe some of you were right and the joke was in poor taste and I'm a huge a-hole for making it because I thought that if he knew the story, he would get the call back, and if he didn't, I'd tell him a funny story about his wife. I accept all that criticism. But this? No. I was done. I tell her I am done with her. She can get back to her husband, leave her husband, keep any friend she wants because I am done. I can forgive a lot, but she had been basically not communicating with me for over 15 years. I was telling her everything about my life and my feelings, and I was absolutely appalled by just how much of a one-way street it turned out to be. I feel like I didn't never really know her. Maybe I played a role in that too. Maybe I was self-centered or selfish and didn't consider her emotions or her signs. I don't know. And you know what? At this point, I don't think it matters. She lied to me so much. She lied to so many people so much. I just don't care anymore. I don't think there's anything left to this friendship to fix. And the worst part? I just gave you this huge update and I genuinely don't know how much of it is true. Maybe she was completely honest with me. Maybe she lied about everything and we're still playing 4D chess. Who knows? I certainly don't. And that, more than anything, is why this friendship is over, because even if I could forgive everything, I can never really trust her. So that's that. There will probably not be any more updates because this was meant to be a lighthearted post and it turned out into a total cluster. And I'm just so tired and so sad. I'm sorry if this wasn't as readable or as coherent as my previous post. This just happened and I am just exhausted. My wife has been very supportive though. I assume at some point I'm due some well-earned "I told you so"s. She knows there wasn't an affair and certainly no stalking, and most of my friends probably know that too. I may try reaching out to some others because, well, I do know maybe they were told even worse things about me. But I am just done with this, and now I'm going to spend what's left of this weekend with my family and try to put this behind me. Thank you all for reading and for your advice. Update 2. October 22nd, 2024. Some of you thought things were going to get pretty crazy. Before I give the update, I should probably clarify some things that were brought up in comments. First, when I said we were roommates, I did not mean we shared a literal room. We lived off campus in an apartment with another friend. Each had their own room. Second, to clarify, and more on this later, the only person she told about having an affair with me long-term was her husband, now ex. Everyone else heard about it only after the engagement party outburst. Third, my house already has cameras and security. My dogs and her never really got along, so I don't think she's going to be trying anything anyhow. I suppose they were the first to know what's up. Okay, on to the actual update. While, unfortunately, I do not have the conversation with her recorded, I do have a text from a later time where she confirms making it up. I did not block her because my wife said it might be better to let her incriminate herself further and have it documented. So I just let her do it for a while, and once I got her to admit she made the affair up, I stopped responding. Got increasingly angry texts but nothing yesterday, so hopefully that's done with. She said some pretty nasty things about my wife and I considered responding, but my wife laughed it off and said that's just how sore losers are and I shouldn't engage any further. So I didn't. I also have screenshots from her husband where she talks about the affair she is supposedly having with me. How do I have those, you ask? Well, realizing just how much she lied about to me, it occurred to me that almost everything I know about her husband, let's call him Dave, comes even indirectly from her. And by this point, I suspect she might not be the most honest conveyor of events. So I took a risk and texted him to meet up. We had a long talk and, again, he might be lying of course, but from what he said, he actually never cheated on her, though she often accused him of that. The innocent mistake she made with his family? Yeah. She felt his cousin's wife was being a little bit too familiar with him, Dave, and started actively spreading the rumor the kid was his, maliciously. This understandably caused huge backlash and was one of the many things which caused Dave to want to leave. The interaction with me in that context was just the final straw. Thinking of that now, the mistake she made with me might not have been so innocent, and I think she might have tried to start some drama if my wife or the kid's mom were less good-natured about the whole thing. So anyway, Dave is fighting for full custody, so that can get really ugly. I don't know the legal nuance of divorce, but I assume he's in for a storm. He really likes a lot of our mutual friends and has been a part of the group for quite a while, so he doesn't really want to have to leave or anything. And to be fair, having talked to him versus Emma, I tend to agree. We talked for a long time and he seems to be a pretty good guy, though I've been wrong before. And I offered some support because, well, having read my posts, you can probably assume what divorcing Emma is like. He worries about it and I understand him completely. So I offered support best I could and will probably continue to do so. So as for my friends, I sort of took y'all's advice, but not really. I didn't do a group text, but I did give a short summary of what happened and some choice screenshots to most of my friends. This started some conversation and a lot of tea was spilled and some realizations were made regarding the fact that a lot of drama that plagued our group over the years can actually be attributed to misunderstandings attributed to Emma. More tea ensued. Wife is having a blast. So yeah, some of my friends were gobsmacked since they didn't really hear Emma's story but understood what a cluster this was. Others were understanding. Emma's best friend blocked me, so she got nothing, but I suspect she'd remain unswayed regardless. And I suppose that's good. Most people I talked to felt we should probably cut contact from Emma and that would be that. Her house in our neighborhood is owned by Dave and she already moved out, so we're not supposed to be seeing too much of her day to day. I don't want to demonize her. I don't think she was evilly cackling as she tried to ruin lives. I think she is a very troubled person and I still hope she finds peace in friends and relationships that would help her through whatever the hell she is going through, and mostly a good therapist. But this is no longer my circus and she is not my monkey. And so I hope she does all that way the hell away from me. As for my wife, here things get a little tricky. See, my wife confessed that she and Dave were having an affair all this time and so we are getting a divorce. I'm kidding about the last part, of course. God, could you imagine? No, my wife is awesome and remained awesome. Since the situation seems to be mostly resolved, she is now allowed to tease me about it, which she had been a lot. I might take a while to live this down, but otherwise we are doing well and for the most part, things seem to have settled down with my friends, though I may want to reevaluate some of my relationships with some of the ones who were more inclined to believe some pretty bad things about me. And yeah, that's about it. Sorry there wasn't really the crazy showdown some of you may have expected. I do think this thing is behind us now and thank you all for reading and for your advice. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My sister banned my kids from her wedding. After 2 years of silence, she showed up with gifts because she couldn't have children herself. Due to the possibility that my children may create discomfort, my sister did not invite me to her wedding. After being infertile for 2 years, she unexpectedly arrived at my door with gifts. My 11-year-old twin boys, who are on the autism spectrum, are my 38 Fahrenheit. To provide a stable atmosphere for children, my spouse and I have put in a ton of effort. They are wonderful children who simply require a little more help and tolerance than most. We faced our fair share of difficulties, including grocery store meltdowns, that one awful school play, don't ask, and the ongoing struggle to obtain appropriate accommodations from the school district. But for the most part, we worked it out. When I was little, my sister and I were finishing each other's sentences. We exchanged secrets, clothes, and everything else. When I discovered I was pregnant, I phoned her first. I supported her at every breakup, career problem, and other situation. When my boys were diagnosed, she was present, or she seemed to me to be. She sat with me as I sobbed and brought over lasagna. About 5 years ago, she met her now husband, and things began to change. He is from an important family of some sort. They are merely wealthy and well-connected. They are not very significant. They act as like they are royalty because his dad served on the local council years ago or something. Over time, my sister began spending more time with his friends and family, which caused us to postpone our plans. The typical drift. Then it became every weekend. Initially, it was just, oh, Josh's mom invited us for dinner or Josh's friends are having a thing. Then they became the subject of every call. The boys took note. They would inquire as to why their aunt had stopped visiting. I didn't want them to feel rejected, so I fabricated excuses. I informed them that she was either traveling or working. I detest lying to my children, but what could I have said? Your new boyfriend thinks you're weird, so your aunt doesn't want to deal with you because that's how it seemed. I was pleased for her when they became engaged. I really was. I sent a card, flowers, and other things. She gave me a strange look and said, I'll think about it. But she never mentioned it again when I asked if she wanted me to assist with wedding plans. I assumed she was occupied or something. I still purchased a dress because I thought I would somehow attend the wedding. I still have the tags on it and it hangs in my closet. Then one day while browse Facebook, yes, I still use it. Don't judge me. I came upon a ton of photos from her wedding. I was not invited to a wedding. Not only was she not invited as a guest, but she was not even in the wedding party. My parents were present. There were our cousins. There were even a few high school acquaintances she hardly ever speaks to anymore. Not me, though. Not my spouse. And certainly not my children. I called her right away, and to my astonishment, she did respond. She hesitated for a moment before responding that her in-laws didn't want any disruptions at the wedding, and that my children would cause discomfort when I questioned her about what the hell happened. She claimed that although she fought really hard to include us, she ultimately gave in because she didn't want any controversy, and it was her special day. It's like my children are living drama machines. I was standing in my kitchen looking at the dumb refrigerator magnet she had gotten me from her trip the previous year, and I can still clearly recall where I was when she said it. Sisters Forever was inscribed on it. While we were still on the phone, I removed it and tossed it in the garbage. I assumed my parents would be as indignant as I was, so I contacted them next. Not at all. In fact, they stood up for her, stated that I should make an effort to comprehend her viewpoint and that sometimes difficult decisions must be taken. Perhaps it was for the best, because my dad even dared to comment that such activities can be too stressful for my boys anyhow. As though they are more knowledgeable than I am about what's best for my children. As though we hadn't been organizing activities and excursions for years. I realized then that this was nothing new. My cousin's children were always treated differently than my boys. Less excitement and fewer birthday gifts. They brought my kids educational toys to help with their development. They would take my niece to the zoo, but they said my boys might not enjoy that kind of thing. They also bought my nephew a drum set, a 4-year-old a drum set. And then I blocked them all. I modified my phone number, went across town. This sped up the process, but we had already planned to relocate since we needed a house with a better layout for the boys. My husband was totally on board. If it's possible, he was even more enraged than I was. In any case, he never really got along with my family. Because he works with his hands, they always treated him as though he wasn't good enough. God forbid someone chooses to work as a carpenter rather than spend their days in an office. We created a brand new existence with pals who genuinely care about our family. We discovered a parent support group for children with autism. As a result, we became acquainted with other families. Our neighbors invite us to their barbecues, and they don't care if one of my children has to take a quiet period or wear noise-canceling headphones. Just regular folks that treat my children like children. It was more than 2 years prior. Sincerely, I believe that chapter of my life was over. Occasionally, mutual friends would post about them, but I would simply scroll past them. Immediately following the wedding, I learned through rumors that my sister was attempting to conceive. Immediately starting a family or whatever. Well done, I thought. She can have the ideal neurotypical small family that she has always desired. Then, unexpectedly, my dad, mom, and sister arrived at our front door yesterday. Included gift bags, these phony smiles, too. I inquired as to how they discovered our address. That question, which is really unsettling, was disregarded. Really, none of our mutual acquaintances would have given it to them without first asking me, and we weren't on the list. They probably hired someone or something, which further adds to the strangeness of the situation. Immediately, my sister broke down in tears, which is often her first reaction, and expressed how much she missed the boys and me. My mother said that they had given it a lot of thought and had come to their error. My dad was about to say no to something, and he just stood there looking uneasy, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do when we were kids. Then my sister reveals the shocking news that she and her husband have been unsuccessfully trying for a child for the past 2 years. After a series of unsuccessful fertility procedures, she is now reevaluating the true meaning of family. As if reading from a Hallmark card, she said that same line. She discussed how her husband's family is pressuring them to continue the family name despite the fact that they have seen 3 doctors and undergone IVF twice. For a minute, I just stared at them trying to take it all in. My mother was nodding in agreement as if it were the most intriguing thing he had ever seen. My dad was studying our porch light. My sister continued to ramble endlessly about how she had a revelation about what is really important in life. Then I told them exactly what I had assumed, that they are settling for my relationship since they are unable to have their ideal small family and only want a relationship right now. When they kicked my boys out of a family gathering because they were what? They showed no concern for them, feeling embarrassed. But my children are suddenly good enough now that my sister dearest is unable to have her own. My father attempted to interrupt me by saying something like, "That's not fair," but I had already finished. My children aren't emotional support animals that they can ignore and then pick up whenever it's convenient. I informed them they were treated as though they were flawed, which damaged them as human beings. I reminded them that we used to get together every Sunday for dinner. But that invitation abruptly stopped when my sister began seeing her husband. At that point, my mother broke down in tears, accusing me of being unkind and claiming that they had learned their lesson. My sister simply looked at me as if I had smacked her, which, to be honest, I had almost done. She persisted in reaching for this present bag as though it would make everything better. Out of the top, I could see a nice toy of some sort, just the kind of item that would overstimulate one of my guys and make them lose it. They couldn't even recall their basic characteristics. They should take their guilt gifts with them, I advised them. I closed the door after that. I could hardly turn the latch since my hands were shaking so much. However, the presents were left outside my door. Afterward, I tossed them in the garage. I informed my husband what had happened when he arrived downstairs after hearing the commotion. Even though he indicated I made the proper decision, I'm now questioning it. The problem is that over the years, my boys have inquired about their aunt and grandfather on a few occasions. I know they remember them even though it's not often. I sometimes question whether I'm denying my children's family ties out of animosity. However, I also believe that allowing these individuals to return to our lives will only prepare my children for future rejection. What happens if my sister does in fact become pregnant? Will she abandon us once more? Will my parents once again treat my children as inferior? I haven't mentioned the visit to the guys. Thank God it happened while they were visiting a friend's house. At the last minute, I switched shifts with a coworker. I was only at home because of that when they arrived here. Am I the a-hole? For the sake of my children, should I have at least listened to them? Update 1 Holy. I had no idea this would go so out of control. I appreciate all of the support and comments. I will miss my inbox. However, a number of you misinterpreted certain points, so allow me to clarify. First, none of my boys are severely autistic. They occasionally struggle with social cues and have certain sensory difficulties, but with the right planning, they can definitely handle a wedding. They've attended past events without any problems. That was merely a pretext. Actually, one of them is really quiet and spends most of his time sitting and playing his games. The other one is more active, but if you explicitly explain the regulations, it complies quite nicely. Unless you consider any youngster who isn't completely silent to be disruptive, they aren't. 2. You weren't there for those who said, well, maybe they really have changed. My sister's expression when discussing her infertility problems was not visible to you. Reestablishing contact with family wasn't the goal. She wanted what she was unable to have. When I gave her a toy she desired as a child, she used to receive the same expression. 3. And no, they didn't offer an apology. Nobody said, "I'm sorry," once in their little address. Now, it was all about their feelings and desires. How difficult things were for them, how it would be good for them to reconnect. Nothing about the harm they had caused or how my children were impacted by their behavior. 4. My husband's family lives on the opposite side of the nation, so someone inquired about them. Although we video chat on vacations and they send birthday cards, they aren't really involved on a daily basis. That's significant though, because they've never been strange about the boy's autism. 5. And please go fetch yourself to the individual who sent me a private message accusing me of exploiting my children's disabilities as a justification for my anger. You don't know what we've endured. Anyway, since my post, a lot has transpired since the incident. My sister has been constantly messaging me. There was more sobbing and guilt tripping. At first, she's acting rudely now, accusing me of being immature and punishing her for one mistake, one error. They ignored my family for 2 years after excluding us all from a significant life event. That is a sequence of intentional decisions rather than a single error. At around 2 in the morning, she also sent this strange SMS expressing her desire to be an aunt and her envy of my motherhood journey. Who speaks in such a manner? It seems so staged and manufactured. When she would come over, this same person would ask me to make the boys wait in a different room because she found their stimming to be bothersome. I didn't answer when my parents called either since I assumed it was them. In their voicemail, they stated that they would like to meet in a neutral setting and talk things over like adults. To avoid having their previous numbers blocked, they apparently changed their numbers or something. My husband believes they are also full of it, and I did wind up telling him everything they stated. He brought to mind how rather than genuinely offering assistance or making an effort to understand, my parents continued sending us papers about cures and recommending that we try various diets or other things when our boys were first diagnosed. I had nearly forgotten about it. Or when in a loud whisper, my mother explained to a waitress that my kid wasn't being impolite when he didn't respond to her inquiry. He's just autistic, as if it were some embarrassing secret. Especially after the diagnosis, my sister would use this phony sympathetic voice to comment on how so hard having twins must be. Will they ever be able to live independently? She would wonder. When they were 4 years old. About a 4-year-old. Who asks at 4? Even neurotypical children are unable to live on their own. I'm still unsure about how to inform my children. I assumed I had received all of them, but one of them discovered a gift bag they had left behind and inquired as to its origin. I simply put it away after saying it was from an old friend. Lying to children makes me uncomfortable, but I also don't want to raise their expectations about people who might vanish in the future. Lately, they have been doing incredibly well. A few of you asked if I would think about doing family therapy with them. Perhaps I will, but I'm just trying to take it all in right now. In order to escape all of this drama, my husband proposed that we go on a family vacation the following month, which sounds like a wonderful idea at the moment. A few hours away is a location with cabins beside a lake. On one school excursion, the boys went there and had a great time. Oh, and strangely, yesterday I received a friend request on Facebook from one of my mom's acquaintances with whom I haven't spoken in years. They're probably attempting to obtain information now via other means. Of course, I ignored it. I may provide another post if something noteworthy occurs, but for the time being, I'm attempting to concentrate on my real family, the individuals who have been here continuously. Update 2. Alright, so a week or so has passed after everything happened, and certain things have happened. I didn't intend to post again so quickly, but I need to vent because things keep happening. To begin with, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who left a comment offering practical guidance rather than simply labeling me resentful, which, well, okay, no shit. I'm resentful. Would you not be? To answer your question, I haven't examined the gifts they brought. However, before publishing this update, I did investigate them. They remained seated in the garage for the time being. Thus, on Tuesday, my sister arrived at my place of employment. She just happened to walk in as I was working my part-time job at this little office. It's still really creepy where I work, and I don't know how she found out. I didn't want to make a scene in front of my coworkers, so I escorted her outside. We were in the parking lot, and anyone might see us, so even though I was angry, I attempted to keep my voice down. She began her address by saying that she has been doing a lot of soul-searching and that learning that she is unable to have children has put things in perspective for her. Then, using the same strange whisper as if it were a secret, she began discussing how her husband had evolved in his thinking on special needs children. None of it sounded real, so I just stood there wondering if she was reading from a script. As she normally does when she is lying, she continues to check her phone during her conversation. She would make up reasons why she couldn't do anything with me, something she used to do when we were teenagers. She then went straight to the point. She wants to show them what real family looks like by taking the boys and me to her husband's family's major reunion in a few months. She genuinely expressed her desire to demonstrate to them the extraordinary potential of exceptional children. As if my kids are some sort of pornographic inspiration for her in-laws. Then something clicked. This has nothing to do with getting back in touch with us. She is doing this to brag to her in-laws about having a relationship of any sort with her nephews as if we were accessories in her life narrative. For example, my children are a backup plan or consolation reward because she is unable to have her own. I walked away after telling her I had to return to work. I need to stop living in the past, she called after me. It is rich coming from someone who, after her initial goal failed, now just wants a relationship. For the remainder of my shift, I was trembling. It was kind of my boss to notice and let me leave early. The problem is that if they had demonstrated any awareness of their mistakes, I might have thought about allowing them to re-enter gradually. However, people continue to treat my children as though they are unique, special, or something. Not only children who should be accorded the bare minimum of difference. They continue to focus on themselves and their requirements. After that, I ended up answering my mom's phone yesterday from a new number I didn't recognize. She said that I'm being too harsh on my sister who is inconsolable. Did you think it was wrong to exclude us from the wedding? I asked her directly. She merely mentioned complicated situations and doing what seems best at the time without providing a precise response. She eventually acknowledged that she felt the wedding wasn't an appropriate setting for children with issues. After I pressed her on the matter, she said exactly that. She referred to them as children with issues, without even mentioning their names or recognizing them as her grandchildren. I ended the call. I have had enough excuses and non-apologies. The suggestion that my children are inferior to other youngsters has been dropped. I'm tired of the way they skirt the true problem, which is that they're ashamed of my children and that they only want a relationship now that their situation has changed. After school today, my husband took the boys out for ice cream, and I finally got around to looking into those gift bags. It was just what I had anticipated, generic items that demonstrated a complete lack of familiarity with my children. Things that are completely out of their age range or completely unrelated to their hobbies. One of the bags had a card and a check for a sizable sum of money. Just the check, no note. They seemed to be attempting to re-enter our lives through financial means. I tore it to shreds. Their money is not necessary for us. For 2 years, we've been getting by just fine without it. Regarding my boys, I finally had a conversation with them last night and gave them the straightforward explanation that they haven't seen their grandparents or aunt in a long time since family members don't always treat one another properly. I didn't try to sway them or go into specifics. If they would meet them again? One of them inquired. Maybe someday, but not right now, I replied. I believe they don't remember as much about my family as I believe they did because they seem to take it really readily. When you're 11, 2 years is a long time. One of them said he recalled how delicious Grandma's cookies were. The other claimed he didn't enjoy the stench coming from Grandpa's house. It did smell like mothballs. They then inquired about their ability to play video games, and that was that. I believe that was the best course of action. It appeared to be acceptable to them. On social media today, my sister shared a cryptic tweet about forgiving people who don't know how to accept love or something similar. Many family members used heart emojis in their comments. In their view of events, I suppose I am the antagonist. I'm good with that. So, yes, that is the current situation. Is the still me? Perhaps. However, I would much rather be a jerk than allow my children to be used as emotional band-aid solutions to cover up someone else's sadness. Update 3. I didn't intend to provide another update so quickly, but circumstances have become worse, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. Do you recall how I said my sister shared that ambiguous post on social media? Evidently, though, she has been posting far more frequently than that. I received screenshots of things my sister has been saying about me online from a common acquaintance who is one of the only people who hasn't taken sides. In essence, she is portraying herself as a grieving aunt who merely wants to get back in touch with her nephews and me, this vengeful bitch using my children as weapons. In addition, she uses the hashtag #AntLove or something similar to it. She is disclosing details about my children, including their ages, the fact that they have autism, and even some old pictures of them, which greatly aggravates me. All for her naive supporters' compassion points. I'm thinking about filing a lawsuit since I feel that my privacy has been violated. My children didn't request to join her on social media. But hold on, things will improve or worse. In fact, the school called me yesterday to report that my parents had arrived in an attempt to visit the boys. They wanted to surprise them at lunch, so they told the office they were the grandparents. Fortunately, The school phoned me right away because they weren't on the authorized pickup list. I've never been more appreciative of school security measures. I immediately lost my shit and called my parents. I threatened to obtain a restraining order if they attempted something similar in the future. In fact, my dad attempted to excuse it by claiming that they didn't think it was a big issue and that they only wanted to see the boys. Is it not a huge problem to arrive at an elementary school without warning? How could that be considered normal behavior? My mother called and began sobbing once more, stating that they were in a difficult situation and had run out of options. I advised them to accept my boundaries for the first time in their life as an alternative. Just in case, I hung up and gave my friend a call to ask for guidance regarding restraining orders. I had to leave work early once more in order to speak with the principal of the school and ensure that they were aware of the circumstances. In fact, she was very encouraging and promised to add a note about unapproved visitors to the boys' files. I had the impression that I was involved in some strange custody dispute. Only this time, the parties involved had no legitimate claim to my children. Then, at about 8 p.m. last night, the doorbell rang. My sister's spouse was standing there when I peered through the peephole. Not my sister, not my folks. Her spouse, the same man who believed my children were unworthy of attending his priceless wedding. I yelled at him to go or I would call the police, but I didn't open the door. Without a word, he pushed an envelope under the door and walked out. It had a formal letter from him in which he apologized for any misunderstandings and described how his marriage had changed him as a person. Another check, larger than the previous one, was also there. For the boy's future, he added in the memo line, as if we were in need of his kindness. It seems as though a public relations team wrote the entire thing. Nothing concrete about what he did wrong or why it hurt us is mentioned. It's all generalizations about family bonds and second chances. My husband simply laughed when I showed him it and remarked, "This guy still doesn't get it, does he? All this is wearing me out. They seem to be deliberately wearing me down as if they believe that if they persist, I will ultimately give in." The lads have also noticed how stressed I am. I sat them both down and assured them that we would not be leaving, that they were secure, that they didn't have to be concerned. I clarified that adult arguments can occasionally take some time to resolve. I was straightforward and comforting. After that, they appeared to be fine. However, I detest that they are even being impacted by this. In the event that we do require legal protection, my spouse recommended that we keep a record of everything that occurs. I've started recording all of the attempts to get in touch, saving voicemails and texts, capturing screenshots of my sister's posts, and other similar activities. It seems excessive. However, so is turning up at someone's place of employment or their children's school. My current strategy is to keep avoiding them as much as I can while still keeping my family safe. I've changed my email password just in case, blocked and locked my sister's new social media accounts, and updated all of our emergency contacts with people we truly trust. I still don't know if I'm doing this correctly. I suppose my current query is, how can I shield my children from all of this drama without having them feel as though a significant secret is being withheld from them? And regardless of how much soul-searching the other person professes to have done, am I mistaken in believing that some relationships are simply too broken to be repaired? Update 4. Well, my last update was a couple weeks ago. I haven't felt the need to update because things have finally settled down a bit, but I thought I should wrap this up for those who have been following along and given support. First of all, we appreciate all of your notes asking how we are doing. Even if they have never met me or my children, it means a lot to know that there are individuals who can relate to my situation. I had my friend's attorney assist me in writing a formal cease and desist letter to my sister and parents following the school incident. Although it doesn't have the same legal force as a restraining order, it does provide documentation in case the situation worsens. In essence, the letter threatened legal action for any more unexpected visits to our house, my place of employment, or the children's school. Interestingly, it appears to have been successful. To the best of my knowledge, my sister has ceased sharing information about us on social media, and there have been no more unexpected visits. In a brief email, my parents acknowledged receiving the letter and stated that they needed time to process everything. I'm good with that. In the end, my husband and I decided to go to the lake. For a long weekend, We rented a cabin and simply unplugged from the outside world. It was adored by the lads. They observed wildlife, gathered rocks, and learned how to skip stones on the lake from my husband. It was just what each of us needed. I've been thinking a lot about family and its true meaning. As a child, I always believed that family was something that could not be compromised. For better or worse, you are trapped with your family. However, as I've grown older, I've come to understand that family is actually about who supports you regularly, who embraces you for who you are, who makes an attempt to comprehend and assist you. I'm not sure if my parents, sister, and I will ever get along again. Perhaps one day, if they can show that they've really changed and are prepared to accept my children for who they are. I'm not holding my breath, though, and I'm not waiting for it to happen by putting my life on hold. Something that truly resonated with me was mentioned by someone in the comment section of my last post. You owe nothing to the family you were born into, only to the family you have chosen. I think that's correct. We're just going about our lives for the time being. If nothing significant changes, I doubt I'll update again. Once again, I appreciate your support and listening. You have no idea how much it helped. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I found a tampon in my husband's car and another in our bedroom. Our youngster suddenly got new clothes that I didn't buy, so I assumed he was cheating. For 7 years, married for 4, I, 29F, have been with my spouse, 30M. I have never had cause to fear he was even slightly unhappy with our marriage, or even disloyal to me. He enjoys making jokes about us still experiencing the honeymoon phase with 2 children in tow, almost 5 years. Had it not for the shocking discovery in his car last month, I would not have questioned it or him. I saw something slatted between the cushions when buckling our daughter into her car seat. Pulling it out, I found it to be a tampon. Had I not had an IUD stopping my period for the past year, and had not even noticed the wrapper type, this would not have been so strange. When I told my husband where I had found it and why I was almost sure it wasn't mine, he seemed not to know what it was, let alone why I was holding it. He shrugged and said, "Most likely Fiona, his co-worker, owned it. My husband often commutes to lunch with his colleagues and, as we live somewhat close to Fiona and her husband, I assumed it was quite likely that tampon had dropped out of her bag either any time he had driven with her or given her a ride. Not particularly significant, I dismissed it, until a few weeks later when we had supper with Fiona and her husband. I had so wanted to believe my husband, yet I couldn't get over the way it had been buried in the seat and how my husband had seemed to have no concern for it whatsoever. Perhaps he was acting stupidly. It's unknown. I did something that, looking back, I find really insane. While we were out together, I staged an emergency and asked Fiona whether she carried any tampons. I sighed with relief when she handed me one nearly exactly like the tampon I had discovered in our back seat. Thus, the tampon there was most likely the same one used here, and most likely there was an innocent explanation for why it had been placed in the back seat in the first place. Until I discovered another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer. I assumed I would have seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene goods. The idea of my husband having an affair makes physically sick. Even more nauseated. The idea that the lady might have left these tampons out for me to find. Should it be my husband's coworker? Why would she offer me one the other night and give herself away? Under any other circumstance, I would want to discuss this with my husband, but I feel too ill and ashamed to approach him with what I discovered. What action ought I to take? Comments. Commenter. I never put a tampon in a sock drawer. I had a period 30 years ago. Trust your gut, then get cameras. Neither does I. I have thought up so many reasons for the tampons that would not point to my spouse, but none of them actually make sense. If it means verifying what I currently suspect, I'm afraid to set up a camera. Commenter. Has Fiona dropped by your house and had time to plant the tampon? OP. She visited our house numerous times and vice versa. She wasn't over any time in the past week. Hence, if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Every time she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs. You would have to go rather far to get to our bedroom. That is past the other bedrooms, around our dogs, over the safety gate. Not saying it's impossible, but on a brief toilet stop, it's really difficult. Commenter. I would guess your children's ages are? Could they have located a tampon and randomly placed it? P2 and nearly 4. Both have a mischievous streak. Hence, I didn't want to rule out the chance of one of them shifting stuff around. But I can't see how they could get their hands on one, maybe 2 odd tampons that I never bought. Update 1. My own hell for the past few weeks has been thinking about every conceivable source of 2 tampons. Nonetheless, I wanted to provide an update. Not long after uploading on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon from Fiona, my husband's ignorance, the tampon in the back seat, and the one in the sock drawer. All the things I suspected but didn't want to accept. The tampons, save from the one I had already thrown away, matched exactly in varying absorbencies. I hadn't left anywhere my husband or daughters would have found them and relocated them. Regarding what they were or where they had come from, my daughters were clueless. With my spouse or without, my sister was sure it was Fiona. She advised asking Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue, since direct confrontation of either party still sounded like a horrible idea. Sadly, they already had preparations in mind. Our house for any misplaced or foreign items. There were none. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior? There was none. And even the girls for any new friends they could have met. The final aspect was especially important to my sister's husband, and it helped to explain his inclination to think the tampons were safe. Given my husband was the one driving the children to and from daycare and most other activities during the week, if anything had been happening in or around our house, he said it would be almost impossible to keep from me and the girls. That helped me somewhat to feel better. I felt differently only till my younger kid, 2 years old, dropped something down last week. My husband demanded that I continue at work while he stayed home with her, even though I wanted to be the one looking after her. I had no problem with that. At that point, we were all already starting to move past the tampon crisis, since my sister and her husband considered it as a positive indication that he would take the time off at short notice. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was merely glad to see a nearly healthy child and a spouse supporting her through it. But towards the conclusion of that week, I returned to find something unusual. Now clad in a onesie I had never seen before, the child I had left that morning in an old PJ set had a small clip in her hair. Though I have a very decent idea of what my children wear on a daily basis, especially in terms of attire, I cannot say I have the best recollection. Before we would have our second, I had vowed off full-length sleepsuits with snaps across the front. Long before long, snaps are simply a pain in the ass and a no-go for effective diaper changes. Just not something I would dress her in. My hubby knows as much. He definitely doesn't accessorize the girls' clothes, and neither does he plan for or buy them. The idea of someone being around our ill child without our awareness confused and rather stunned me. I went straight to inquire whether anyone had been over to visit my spouse or the girls. I didn't second think like before. He seemed perplexed and asked me why I would believe that. All day it had been him and the children. Once more, I asked him whether someone had stopped over to say hello. He denied it. I should cool off, he advised. Our oldest daughter was in the room and realized something was wrong. So, even if I might have screamed out and came forward with the charges right then and there, my husband swore that the girls had not been with anyone but him. I asked him a 3rd time in a subdued manner if anyone had been near our children. He also denied styling anyone's hair or shopping for new clothing. I chose to leave since our daughter was in the room and my feelings were all over the range. Then I couldn't make sense of it. It hardly looks clearer now, after I drove myself mad with illogical arguments. Comments. OP. My 2-year-old can only string a few words at a time to respond to a few inquiries. She responds depending on the cues I provide. When I question her about her time with Daddy or her wardrobe, I might inquire, "Who gave you that pretty bow?" And she might answer pretty bow back to me or Mama or Daddy over and over. OP. Almost 4. My older daughter was in daycare that morning. She cannot remember anything different from that day. Her memory of the PJ change or the hair clip is lacking. Hence, my estimate is she was changed during that morning, but I'm not sure exactly. OP. My 45-minute trip to work makes stopping for lunch very impractical. OP. My sister has not observed anything unusual. She has been gracious enough to leave work and drive past several times here and there. At the front door is a Ring camera. I have the app on my phone with alerts enabled. Not yet. Nothing exists. I'm merely the least tech-savvy person. Hence, I would be open to suggestions for more covert surveillance. Worried another camera will be easy to find. Edit. We indeed routinely test our carbon monoxide detectors. One of the hair clips might have originated from a daycare, although I could see the hair clip as a possibility, less plausible with the onesie. If either of my younger daughters had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I detest with a passion, lol. She hadn't been to daycare in days. People say they are eager to know how this story ends. The Hollywood horror ending is my financial one. Hopefully. I dreamed about the dogs too, so I could at last quit gathering their imagined shits and things. Update 2. I knew I was nowhere with the accusations and half-baked guesses. After almost losing my head over a hair clip and onesie, I wasn't sleeping, eating, or taking care of myself the way I should have been, since I was so consumed in the paranoia and suffering of my circumstances, and I wasn't getting any answers. I thus decided to activate the hidden cameras and have them sent to my sister's house. My brother-in-law agreed to assist with the install/setup at my place. Still, I got my much-needed validation before the cameras were ever delivered. Last week, while I was at work, a Ring alert let me know the motion at the front door. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet, or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you may picture my astonishment when I watched a footage of a young woman leading my daughter into the house, hand in hand with my husband and our other daughter close by. My spouse was at work. The girls were meant to be in childcare. From what I knew, the wife was residing 2 states away under court order keeping her there. I asked my husband straight away what this woman was doing in our house. He ignored me, so I texted him, knowing I had received the Ring alert. He most likely understood he had messed up by entering the front door and sought to postpone the unavoidable. He was foolish too, but after the 5th or 6th call, he at last answered. As I would subsequently learn, the woman on the camera was my husband's sister. She most certainly supplied the bow, the onesie, and the tampons. She is also a recovered addict who spent the better part of her childhood and young adulthood pressuring the silence of another one of my husband's family members following her molestation. She is also a registered sex offender. Years had passed without seeing or hearing from her, and from the way my husband spoke about her, I never expected I ever would. But here she was, in our house, surrounded by our kids. Let me say I was enraged, though it was hardly an affair at all. Knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening made it much more repulsive. My husband was particularly high on the list. Since my sister-in-law, fresh out of another stay in recovery, had wanted to rebuild relationships with those she had harmed, my husband had been meeting in secret, usually at our house while I was at work, not wanting me to know or, worse, keep her away from our family and children. They would come in via the garage in my husband's car, so the Ring camera at the front entrance wouldn't alert me. She had even stayed in our bed overnight on a weekend when I had gone on a business trip. On a night my husband told me he dropped off our daughters, she watched over them. She bought the girls' clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow, the identical ones my husband had promised in his life that I had dressed her in myself. My spouse insisted this was all in my head. The tampons, the one piece, the bow, everything else. Shrugging aside each increasing disturbing revelation like it was news to him and telling me I was being unreasonable. He was quite happy to see me suffer for weeks over a lady he maintained did not exist. 2 years after I had given birth to a child, for years after I had told him one of my main worries about parenthood was PPD like my mother had experienced with me, I worried about not being totally present for our children and about having shame and remorse all around as they got older. He advised me to get back off and reassess my mental health. I missed the girls too much and wasn't sleeping enough. Since he was my spouse, and since no other way of events made sense, I gave him the benefit of the doubts. After a month of this mental game, I have nothing to show for my trust except this miserable state and a great deal of resentment. Commenter: call the cops and a lawyer. One reaction already. On it. We are, believe me, walking burnt ground with this now. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Dad planned to marry his young girlfriend just weeks after my mom's death, threatening to kick me out. Am I the a-hole for ruining his wedding? My father has always mistreated me badly. He was obviously not interested in being a dad from a very young age, but I never could find out which he disliked more, being married to my mother or father to me. Given that he treated my mother no better than he treated me, I believe he must have loathed it equally. I lost my mother only 4 weeks back. I turned 17 some months ago. It was not surprising. She had been battling lung cancer for some time and at last passed away in a hospital. 3 years ago, she was diagnosed. Since then, it felt like I had been holding my breath. I believe I at last let it all go when Mom died. She was my friend. Thus even now it feels quite strange to be without her around. She was, most crucially, the only person there to guard me from my father. Every single day, in the house where I grew up, my parents would argue over something or another. They obviously did not love one another, and I really have no idea why they were married. My mother would tell me that they had loved each other at some time every time I asked her why she had married him. They would always make up, but I never could forgive my father as fast as my mother did. She had been urged to leave him several times, as occasionally he would say extremely terrible things to her during a quarrel. He would say things like how he wishes she died from her illness so he could go on with his life and how he regretfully ever was with her and had a child with her. She just resisted when I advised her to go several times. I'm not sure why. Regarding myself, I had wanted to go from the age of 4 years old but had nowhere else to go and no other relatives either. Raised by her grandmother who passed away while she was in college, my mother was an orphan who had lost her parents in an accident when she was small. She contacted no other family members, hence I knew nothing about my father's side of the family, as he never took us to see them. He claimed not wanting us to see his family since he did not get along with them. There was no elaboration, and I asked him, too afraid. I was used to being screamed at for stuff, hence I wasn't going to paint a bullseye on myself by prying into anything like that. I had to deal with my father since, all told, my parents were the only family I had. My mother refused to go. I was heartbroken when she died, but my dad carried on as though nothing had happened. It was not shocking to me in the least since he had been acting the same way even when she was unwell. Knowing he did not love anyone, I did not expect him to be sensitive. He most likely lacked even that ability. What truly startled me though was that my dad brought home a considerably younger woman once we were finished with the funeral and paperwork, 2 weeks after my mother died. She was simply here one morning, drinking coffee in our living room. My father told me she was my new mother when I plucked the bravery to ask her who she was. When he was telling me that, he apparently also had the largest smile on his face, probably his creepiest one yet. Against my will, I found myself remarking on it since it had only been 2 weeks since my mother died. I told him it was a little too soon to bring his girlfriend home. That brought me to a lecture from him on how this would be my stepmother in a few days and on the need of respecting her. He told me he didn't care that I had just lost my mother. I had to treat her the same way I had treated my own mother. He dropped another bombshell on me and informed me he was getting married as I was over myself with rage trying to argue with him. Ever since her diagnosis, he claimed, he had known that she would not be able to make it as she had always been delicate and frail ever since he had known her. He had thus begun searching for substitutes. That is exactly the word he used. For the past 2 years, he had been with Melissa, his girlfriend. Now that my mother was at last out of the way, he told me he was planning to be married once more and ensure her death had no impact on his life at all. It at once made sense why he had been untouched by my mother's illness and death thus far. He had replaced her. I honestly just turned away from him because I was disgusted. I told him I would not be attending the wedding and expected him to say he was good with it since, really, why would he care? Then he informed me I had to go, which caught me off guard. He informed me he could only make this look regular and acceptable to other people if I attended. So, explaining why it was, he seemed to be saying that by showing up for the wedding, I would have accepted it and that since his own daughter had not objected to this marriage, nobody else would have any cause to remark on it either. Basically, he required me to be there so it would seem less depraved, which in and of itself was really crazy. To be honest, my father seemed insane. Besides saying such strange and pointless things, He was getting married 2 weeks after his wife died without thinking about what other people would say. Not only that, the woman marrying him was only 25 at most, a few years older than I am. Her actual age is unknown, however. She cannot be older than that. My dad falls in late 40s. This man who recently lost his wife to cancer and should be in mourn right now is instead getting married and expecting his daughter to act like this is all normal and that she supports it. It is eerie enough. He definitely belongs in a straitjacket in a padded room. It's a complete formula for catastrophe. I told him there was no way I could be at this wedding when informed me he was marrying Melissa. He was free to become offended at that as desired. Then he informed me he would not only be offended but also kick me out should I miss a meeting. He would also ensure that I never got access to the college fund my mother and he had been saving for me ever since my birth since, as he had stated, my mom's money had gone into the education fund as well as his. So I considered it to be essentially unjust, although I think I was entitled to it. Sadly, I couldn't make him turn over the money to me as it is not required by law. There were no records to support it. Hence, it was not as if he had set it aside especially for that purpose. Basically, I would be tossed out and would not have any chances of attending college either if I skipped that wedding. On one hand, I did not want to seem like I was part of this or that I was encouraging this craziness in any kind whatsoever. Thus, I was in a quite tough situation. However, I also had to look out for myself as I had a few months left before I left for college, and I couldn't afford to lose money since I had none of my own. My mother's will take some time to process. Hence, I would only obtain the inheritance only then. For now, it seemed as though my only choice was to show up for the wedding and present myself as helping my father. Last week, I was informed about the wedding, but I just couldn't get myself to welcome it. I thus resolved that I had to go all out to prevent this from occurring or at least try to intervene. I told my father I would be at the wedding, but then I started searching for something, anything, to throw off the proceedings. Since I just couldn't bring myself to let this happen, I just wanted something. I really had no idea what I was looking for. When my father left his laptop alone, I got quite lucky. Miraculously lucky. A few days back, he and Melissa went out to celebrate their marriage by dinner. I was alone at home, leaving his laptop on the coffee table my dad had. Since it was locked, I expected nothing when I opened it, therefore I just tried to guess the password. Fortunately, I got everything just perfect. Melissa's name came first, then his own birthday, which was strangely startling. Still, once I arrived, I could hardly believe it. I first found nothing when I started browse his social media. Then I saw he had 2 Facebook profiles and I chose to review the second one, which I had not seen before. Surprisingly, it was his hidden account, set up for his side of the family. He had been telling my mother and me he did not get along with his family, but here he was, on his other page, hanging out with individuals we had never seen before who seemed to be certainly linked to him. As I searched, additional pictures from years past turned up. He obviously has been in contact with his family all along. He had simply been fooling us. I then chose to review his communications on that account and discovered that he had been in contact with his parents for really a lengthy period. I guess he also carried another phone. From the start, he had been living essentially 2 lives and nobody knew. Although my mother had known about some of this, she had never shared anything with me. Neither had my mother. I was rather sure his family knew nothing about me whatsoever. Following his talks with his father on his account, I discovered that his father believed he was living away from home for business only, nothing else. He had a full family here, little knowing of it. I snapped brief pictures of those conversations and turned to my own phone to talk to my grandfather. Given all of this was so absurd, I was really anxious about whether he would even believe me. I could hardly believe it myself. Still, I went to my room and signed in using my own Facebook account. I got in touch with the profile I saw on my dad's page. As I had predicted, there had been no mutual friends, so I had never been able to locate him. I had never been able to track these people as I hadn't even known my grandfather's true name for all these years. Having his account now, I messaged him straight away and tried to rapidly explain everything. This was an emergency. Hence I provided him my phone number and advised him to get in touch as soon as he could. I included additional pictures of the screenshots I had taken, outlining how I had tracked his profile. I also sent some pictures of me with my parents so he would know this was not a hoax directed on him. After not hearing anything for the following 12 hours, I nearly gave up hope. Maybe he had chosen not to react since he felt someone was pulling a practical joke on him. But I eventually got a call from my granddad when Dad was at work. I was simply lucky that he had phoned me before that and had not mentioned this to my father. Anyway, I answered my phone and told him what was happening as soon as he called. For the past 17 years, he informed me he had been made to believe that my father was working elsewhere, that is, away from Iowa, where he was originally from. Apparently, my dad had a separate house and everything here, which is where my grandparents had lived whenever they paid him visits. He had also visited his son several times. About none of this they had the least of knowledge. They had spent the last 12 hours trying to get over the shock of it all. At first, this all seemed to them as a joke, but they came to recognize it was real when they viewed my mother in the family pictures I had emailed. Apparently, my father had told his parents he had broken up with my mother, so he had never told them about his marriage and the family he had. They disapproved of her 18 years ago when my parents first began dating. He had informed my grandparents he had dumped her as they were quite clear they did not want my father to marry my mother. For the past 2 decades it was the fiction he had been selling. Now he had at last been caught. My grandparents had not wanted my father to wed my mother for really serious reasons. It was because they accused my mother of being a gold digger, and she had reportedly been trying to cheat on him. This was due in part to the first time my father had brought my mother home to see his parents. She had instantly targeted his older brother, a surgeon who clearly made more than my father. My uncle's refusal to keep his lips shut over something so significant led my grandparents to learn about it. My father had been asked to split up with my mother, but he had turned down their proposal. I believe it was because of me since, based on my calculations, my mother most likely already was pregnant by then. My parents were given an ultimatum. Either they would cut him off from their life or he would split up with my mother. They understood she was only with him for the money. Hence, cutting him off would drive my mother to leave him eventually. My dad told them he had split things off with my mother, although obviously he had not, as they remained together, and this is the reason I'm here. If my mother had really done such things, I wonder why they stayed together. This fundamentally altered my view of both my parents. Once I knew these things, though, I told my grandparents how badly I was being treated and that I had nowhere else to rely on. But I was depending on them now that I knew they existed and wasn't as alone as I had first thought. I still would understand if they turned away from me. Thank goodness they decided to assist me. I was able to stop the wedding from taking place. Like his parents, I returned to my father's house. Also, 2 days ago they flew down here. Yesterday I managed to slip them into the wedding. All of a sudden, we were honored guests. Our backyard was the venue for the wedding, as just a small number of guests were expected to attend. It was supposed to be a modest and private ceremony. Only my father's colleagues and boss, a couple of his acquaintances, and that was it. He had obviously not invited his family. They had not even received invitations to his first marriage, but I arranged for their attendance at the second. I emailed my grandparents and informed them it was finally time for them to show up, as I wanted to halt everything before the vows were taken. Melissa had walked down the aisle and everything. I slipped out right before the vows, and then it was my turn to walk down the aisle with my grandparents. For the theatrical purposes of it all, my father's face dropped, and Melissa seemed fairly perplexed as soon as he saw me walking down the aisle with his parents. Once I drew close to him, I declared that his parents now knew the truth, that I had at last exposed all his falsehoods. He could bid farewell to his inheritance since all was now coming to me rather than to him. Since I already had a place to live, people looking after me, and also my college fund, I no longer needed him either. Knowing he was a liar, I did not want to be with him, so he could do anything he pleased. I then left with my grandparents, and since then we have been staying in a hotel, getting ready for our trip back. Since I haven't known these folks, my grandparents need a lot of catching up. Likewise, there is plenty to discuss about my parents. We haven't returned yet, mainly because this morning my father finally got in touch with my grandfather and informed him that what he did was simply not proper. He had supposedly never allowed his parents to be happy and accused them of trying to control him all his life. Saying I just couldn't stand to see him happy with anyone else, He also accused me of trying to ruin him by showing up at the wedding like that. Since Melissa is now avoiding him and the wedding was clearly called off yesterday itself, immediately after we left, he is blaming all of us. I am therefore good with showing up for his second wedding with his parents and exposing him for lying. Date 1. The wedding call-off was 4 days ago. I decided not to answer my father. He does not deserve it. My grandparents agreed as well. He knows where to find us should he wish to communicate with us. We still occupy the hotel. We have provided him with the specifics. If he would want to talk with us, he could come see us, and then we could have a personal conversation, but the kind of conversation we wish to conduct over the phone or via text is not this one. He still hasn't turned up yet, and just 3 days remain before I return to Iowa with my grandparents. They have a farm there. They're really wealthy, and I will be taken care of considerably better than I was here. They assured me that they would see to it that I could attend the college of my choosing, and that I wouldn't have to suffer following this. Since we first met, my grandparents have been almost pampering me. I believe they are attempting to make up for lost time, which is rather lovely of them. Though they seem to love me a lot, they loathe my mother and subsequently my father as well. Update 2. My grandparents and I are meant to be leaving in 2 days. My father decided this morning to at last pay us a visit and speak with us. When they contacted me this morning, I was really taken aback to see him in my grandparents' hotel room, but I immediately recovered and vowed not to talk to him the whole time until he apologized. Clearly, though, given someone like him, that is too much to demand. He was here just to discuss how unfair it was that my grandparents had opted to cut him off from their life and hand me all the wealth instead. He claimed to have already lost Melissa, my mother, and his wife as well. Things were already really terrible for him. Since I also wanted no more contact with him, to top it all, his close friends and colleagues, all the attendees of the wedding, are now acting strange with him. What transpired at the wedding has damaged his reputation. Hence he is thinking of leaving his employment. He believes he cannot operate in such a hostile environment. To put it plainly, he had kind of lost all he owned till a few days earlier. Then we showed him at the wedding, exposed him, and wrecked everything for him. The least we could do was let him inherit something he had been striving for years. Otherwise, he would not have lied to all of us for so long in the first place. He started lying since he merely wanted everyone to be happy after marrying my mother. He said he had intended to tell his parents the truth, but as time went on, it became more embarrassing to bring up. He had to keep up his lies and arrange a complex double life since everyone, including his parents, was against his happiness. He asserted he was the victim. Now knowing I would be taken care of anyway, he came here to claim what he felt due to him. The legacy. From the start, he had been hoping and fighting for this. It would be unfair to deny it for such a minor cause. The way he was behaving as the victim infuriated me. Already, I lost it totally when he declared he deserved the fortune. I screamed out at him before my grandparents could say anything. If you really deserve that inheritance, then I also deserve to be treated like a human being. For the past 17 years, he had never shown me any love, affection, or even the smallest of respect. 2 weeks after I lost my mother, he had genuinely threatened to kick me out and use my education fund for his own expenses if I opposed his marriage to his young girlfriend. It was only fair his parents took away anything he thought he deserved, since he could not give me anything I deserved. My behavior startled him since I had never before stood up to him like that, but now thanks to my grandparents, I no longer felt terrified of him. Usually, when I was younger, this worked to shut me down. He tried to glare at me, but this time I wasn't going to be silent. Earlier, I would do that since I knew my mother wouldn't leave. Probably for the same reason my father didn't cut off relations with his parents. Money, which upon her death was ultimately futile. Her only advantage from living with him was passing away at a reputable hospital. My dad tried to yell at me when I refused to be quiet, but my grandparents told him it wasn't going to work anymore. My grandparents threatened to call security on him. Thus, after some conflict, he had to leave. He wouldn't get anything unless he owned any accepted his mistakes. They were very plain. It would take a lot even then for them to pardon him. Had I chosen to keep the inheritance for myself, he would not have anything at all. Promising he would make sure we pay the price for what we had done, he fled like a toddler having a tantrum. What he believed he was doing is unknown to me, though he most likely thought his actions would frighten us. It did not. It strengthened our conviction that by not forgiving him, we were doing morally. He was not even remorseful, hence nothing could be forgiven. It gives me great pleasure to be leaving with my grandparents in a few days. I simply want to escape all of this. Although I will miss my buddies, it makes no difference now. Fall brings my trip to college. I just finished all of this. I graduated from high school. Update 3. Hi, so I left home 1 year ago. I haven't blogged anything for the previous few months since I've been really busy with college. I had essentially forgotten about it too. Following that battle with my dad in the hotel room, which I discussed in my last update, my grandparents and I headed off. We hardly spoke with my dad over the following 2 weeks, but I did run across a lot of members of his side of the family. I believe this family is the one I deserved all along. They all love me. Though she was too self-serving, my mother most likely attempted to love me. Ultimately, it damaged me more than it did her. My uncle assured me he would pay for my college tuition, therefore relieving me of any concern about it. That has been a great comfort. Though they had hardly known me for a few weeks, these folks had already resolved to show me all the affection I had been lacking for the past 17 years. For that, I am most grateful. A few months after moving in with my grandparents, I had to go to college, so I spent little time with them. My college is near where they reside, so on weekends I get to see them. There are no grievances regarding that. Not to apologize, but rather to remind me that I wrecked him and should feel bad. My father has tried to get in touch with me multiple times. He continues asking me to check on my grandparents to see whether he fits the inheritance. He emails and chats from several accounts but doesn't understand that being defensive won't support his cause. A sincere and honest apology would be the only thing that could assist him, yet at this time it is too little, too late. I will simply ignore him. It is not worth it to reply to him. I lack the time or will to indulge his illusions. At last, I have the family I am due and am content with them. Right now, I'm loving my college life, so I will concentrate on the advantages in my life and attempt to forget about the past. I simply want to keep on improving personally. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Refusing my boyfriend's threesome request led to a wedding drama and a shocking revelation. Am I the a-hole? This is a throwaway because too much identifying info is on my main page. I, F29, met my boyfriend, Michael, M35, at a show I performed in. I am a theater person as a hobby, and he complimented my performance and bought me a drink. We have been together now for a little over a year. His sister got married last week, and I was initially pleased to be asked to be a bridesmaid, but also a bit surprised as she barely knows me. But I thought this was an attempt to have an excuse to also get to know each other better. Michael and I got into an argument the week before because he said that he wanted to entertain the thought of spicing up our sex life and having a threesome. He said since I was bi, why not? I didn't like the idea too much and said so, and it devolved into a petty Cold War, and he started to ignore my messages after he left my place. He didn't reply to me at all until the day before the wedding, asking what time he needed to pick me up since we can't go separate. Otherwise people will gossip about us. He barely said anything to me the whole time we traveled to the venue. The wedding was fine, but at the reception he got me a plate and leaned in to kiss me, but I shied away and he got up to mingle. I started feeling ill not too long after, and 911 was called. I realized I was having an allergic reaction, but had my pen, but still had to be carted off by the ambulance. And that's when someone who was looking for Michael said that he had left with some of the other groomsmen to a bar nearby. I called 6 times and texted that it was an emergency as I was getting checked out by the paramedics, and again when they strongly suggested I go to the hospital. But he never replied. I was released by the hospital and called him to ask him to pick me up, but he didn't pick up. So I woke up my best friend, and she took me home and stayed with me overnight to make sure I was okay. The next morning, Michael called me, but I was still asleep, so he left me a lengthy voicemail yelling at me that I ruined his sister's wedding and that I always have to make things about me. He came over to further berate me and told me he should just break up with me at this point as I'm dramatic and this is all too much. So I pointed out that he had gotten my plate, knew full well that I have a legit allergy to coconut, and that his sister had told me afterwards that he knew that the cake he gave me was the coconut cream cake. As all the food had signs saying what it was and what the ingredients were, as I'm not the only person with allergies that attended. He left, telling me that he can't talk to me when I'm this way. I was honestly exhausted, so I didn't bother going after him, but his father called me to ask how I was doing, and after I answered, he then told me how I'm hurting Michael's heart by blaming him, and Michael has been inconsolable since we fought. I texted Michael to ask if we could talk, but the conversation went back around somehow to the threesome and how I don't respect him even in intimate settings or want to hear him out regarding his needs and make things about me. I am so confused because to me, this feels manipulative, but I respect his father so much. I go to their church and he is a pastor there, so to have him tell me I'm in the wrong through me. Edit. A lot of comments are suggesting that this was intentional, and I've actually never considered he gave me something I'm allergic to on purpose, and certainly not to use against me to leverage in our argument, but I think I may have to come clean and talk to his parents. I know them well, so hopefully it won't go too badly. Update 1. Michael texted me this morning to apologize. He said the wedding was stressing him out and he had a lot on his mind, so he accidentally handed me the plate he meant for himself, not the one for me. He said he didn't know I was in the hospital and felt bad he wasn't there for me, but he left the reception with some of the groomsmen to blow off much-needed steam. I don't know how I feel about it all, so I just replied okay. He is now asking to come over and talk this out in person. Second edit. For any and all of you calling me stupid or implying I am a child and why am I still with this guy, etc., just know you remind me a lot of him, of how he used to put me down and bully me, and it's a real wonder of mine if you treat people in your life like he did me. I suspect you do. Glad to be rid of him and indifferent about you. Now for some comments. Comment 1. OP, be honest, have you now that you are looking back seen red flags like this? This behavior likely didn't just show up. Have you ever gotten ill after a disagreement with him? OP. Oddly enough, I am sitting with my BFF and she asked me the same question. And yes, actually. Our first real argument that I can remember, I was down with a stomach bug for almost a week and he visited me and made soup. Then, the only big argument I can recall outside this one, he wanted to use labels really soon onto us going on some dates and I didn't, and the next morning I was sick with chest pains and stomach cramps. I don't want to sound dramatic or accusatory, but since people have commented he might have purposefully given me something I'm allergic to, I just don't know anymore. Comment 2, NTA. The two of you are completely incompatible. He wants threesomes, you want to attend wedding receptions without leaving in an ambulance. OP. Okay. When I read this I was with Bestie and we've been drinking and the scream I scrumptious laughing so hard nearly killed me more effectively than the coconut LMAO. Update 2. Well, many of you were right. I should not have met him in person, but I did. He took me out to lunch, insisting he pay for it all, and it was incredibly over the top. He had flowers and a written letter of apology, but as some of you messaged me, his apologies dodged the point by way of if I hurt you or that you're feeling X or Y feeling, etc. He quoted some scriptures and said he has repented as his carelessness caused me harm. I wasn't much moved by any of it until he said how much his family loves me and how much our church roots for us as a couple, and I kind of sat back and realized that one flimsy reason I was even entertaining forgiving him and staying was because of the pressure I dealt with as the GF of a pastor's son. It occurred to me that there were so many times I let things slide because he is the heir apparent, so he had the power in the social aspect of our community. Sorry, I know I'm rambling, but I'm emotional and tipsy. I remember just staring at him and saying it was incredibly alarming that by now, he can't be aware of my one-angle allergy, and that he didn't bother to tell his own GF he was stepping out with the guys or even that he was stepping out of his own sister's wedding at all. He then said it was really actually kind of stupid of me to eat a cake that had coconut and implied I'm an idiot for not realizing what I had was coconut. I realized then he would never accept that he was in the wrong and thus there was no point. I stood up and smiled and said, "You know what? Don't worry about it. Thanks for dinner. Good night." To which he replied that if I wasn't going to grow up and accept his apology, I'm a waste of his time. He uses that a lot whenever we disagree and it usually hurts me deeply, but this time it was like a Rolodex of memories flooded my brain and I really suspect he's been deliberately making me sick whenever we disagree to teach me a lesson. I said I was done and he needn't waste his time with me from this point on and left. I then sent screenshots to his father explaining the situation as best I can without blaming Michael for planned illnesses without proof, and I got a text about 20 minutes ago from his father. His father is incredibly disappointed in my immaturity and hurt that I wouldn't even give it until Sunday at church where we can pray together, talk it out, and heal. I felt this way for a while, but I was able to say at this time that using religion as a tool of guilt is low, and I am no longer concerned with his version of God, as that version is a judgmental, cruel, and heartless jerk, while the one I always thought of was loving, compassionate, and kind, and I am done. I was told by him and by further emails that I am no longer welcome at my church until I reconcile with my true husband and learn compassion and respect for my leaders. So I guess that's it. I will enjoy sleeping in tomorrow and eating coconut-free food while lazing about my home rather than going to 3 separate church services starting at 8 a.m. and then figure it all out from there. I don't know how to sign off, but I do watch a concerning amount of Charlotte Dope videos, and she usually ends things with practical like, do your laundry or something. So I will just say, live for yourself, feed your soul, and know you're enough. I certainly am going to put in the work to get there, and I hope we all make it to the other side, content and filled with love and joy. And by the way, Fu Michael, I know you are reading this. I know you know it's me, and I hope your socks are always just a little soggy. OP added in the comments here. I forgot to add to my post, but I didn't want to bring the threesome requests into it. Well, I sent his daddy screenshots of some texts if you'd like some drama. Here are the top 2. It was the night I sent him home after he tried and failed to pressure me into sex. He told me that I was missing out and should be grateful, since your body makes me sick but my love for you is stronger. Would it kill you to be grateful enough to just do a HJ? And on his birthday, I had just been in the hospital after passing out from exhaustion and dehydration and went straight to his party. I stayed at his place until everyone left, and I left soon after helping clean all but the kitchen, and he sent, "You could have cleaned the kitchen then or stayed over for sex. Then you're a waste of time if I don't even get birthday sex. Thanks a lot." And after both, B suggested adding a third. His dad hasn't responded. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Holy crap, and you stayed with him? You poor girl. No one deserves someone like that in their life, but you didn't say if you told his dad about him sending you to the hospital and potentially killing you. Because we both know and the rest of Reddit knows that he did that intentionally, and if there was proof of him giving you that cake, you could probably send his happy ass to jail. P. I didn't. And don't have the best self-esteem. And here is the only black woman in the town that I've known of. I've always known that I'm considered less desirable. Not saying that's right, but just knowing where I live. Been here since my preteen years. When Michael asked me out, it was like a parade. Everyone acted like it was a Cinderella story and I won a lottery or something. I have a friend who I've been texting today and she is letting me know how dumb I've been. I never told her of our issues and is about ready to commit crimes LOL. I think I lost myself for a bit, but I wanted to leave the church low-key for a while because of my treatment, so that helps a bit. Update 3. It has been a hot minute. I forgot about my posts until I was watching a YouTube video on Reddit stories, and the story reminded me that I never did update. I found a church in my city a bit more laid-back, like we can go to the pub after and have a laid-back laugh. I did like it and made amazing friends I'm still in touch with. But the going to church idea came from my therapist, and it was to see if I do identify with the church or the ideals of it, and I don't. So now I am back to being the heathen I am LOL. My ex quickly moved on, and he had a new GF within a month of us breaking up. Bless that woman, I thought, because isn't she in for a ride? Oddly enough, she reached out to me on my Facebook, and I was curious and opened it. She started with who she is, how long she and ex have been dating, and how long they knew each other. Childhood friends, so basically forever. She then said that she feels convicted by the Holy Ghost to seek a resolution between me and ex, and she is worried I may be his true wife, and if I cannot forgive then I am proving I am not, and to let her know as she cannot marry him until I make this clear. I kid you not. Seeing the screenshots, the chat with my new church buddies, my friends sent vomiting emojis and that this is a cult and not a faith. I concluded they were right and replied with, yeah, marry him if that's what you want, and nothing more. I am getting messages from members of the church, but I don't much care. I've loved my life since leaving. I didn't know life could be so enjoyed. Really? And it makes me wonder how much damage the church had on me. But for now, just for fun, I am going to an appointment with a friend of a friend's apprentice on tarot readings LOL. No, that's true. I was asked. No offense to anyone who believes in it, it's just not normally my thing, so I'm curious and interested. Maybe it will be good. I will know. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my daughter to visit my cousin's house because of her autistic son's behavior? My cousin and I both have 2 children who are the same age. We have 12-year-old boys and 11-year-old girls. Her 12-year-old son, Damon, is autistic and has a lot of issues that we believe are unrelated to autism, but we are no experts on the subject. My 12-year-old son, Christopher, loves hanging out with Damon because he enjoys knowing that he brings some sort of joy to Damon's otherwise rough life. Damon has been kicked out of every school he has attended, so he has no friends. Our daughters are the best of friends as well. They are basically inseparable. Well, about 2 weeks ago, my cousin asked if she could take my kids for the week. Co-outbreak at school, so school was called off anyways. I said that was fine after asking the kids if they wanted to go. Everything was perfectly fine for the entire week, I thought. I checked on the kids often. They seemed happy and to be having fun. However, that all changed when I picked my kids up. That's when they told me all the weird shit Damon was doing, such as my daughter would wake up to Damon stroking her hair or arms while she slept, and when she caught him, he pretended to be asleep. He went into his sister's room at some point during the night against his parents' rules, I guess. He also told my daughter several times that he likes her. And when my daughter told my cousin about it, she basically said, "It's okay to have crushes, but where you're related, you simply can't act on it." I guess he also kept trying to take pictures of her. I'm unsure whether or not she corrected her son's behavior by touching my daughter in her sleeve. However, I do know that not once did she tell me anything that happened. My kids did while she kept it hush-hush. After finding all of this out, I called my cousin and said that my kids would no longer be allowed there because my daughter now felt uncomfortable around Damon. She is pissed because he doesn't mean it. It's not like he went out of his way to be weird. He doesn't understand. It's his autism, but says she ultimately understands. However, she's still making me feel bad about it because her kid has autism and doesn't know why he isn't allowed to see my kids anymore. And I guess he has been having a lot of outbursts since that point, one of them resulting in her needing to call the police because he became violent and started throwing chairs. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Am I the a-hole for asking my son to stop wearing his favorite jacket because it looks gay? I'm a single dad to my son, Oliver, 10M. He's with me most of the time and sees his mom every other weekend. He's an awesome kid. Creative, full of energy, and he's got his own sense of style that's pretty unique. He loves bright colors, nail polish, and clothes that some people might think are more girly. If I'm honest, I think Oliver might be gay, and I'm totally cool with that. I've always made it clear that whoever he turns out to be, I'll support him 100%. Because of how he dresses and acts, Oliver's had a really tough time with other kids. He got bullied so badly at his old school that I ended up pulling him out and homeschooling him. The school wasn't helpful at all, and it was heartbreaking to see him go through that. He struggled to make friends, and it kills me to see him feel so alone. Now he's starting back at school in September, and he's really excited about it. But recently, we were at a cousin's birthday party, and Oliver wore his favorite jacket, which is a bright pink sparkly one that he loves. Some of the other kids started picking on him, saying he looked gay. I stepped in, got the kids to apologize, but it ruined the day for Oliver. I'm worried about how things will go when he's back at school. I've been thinking about whether I should talk to Oliver about maybe toning it down a bit, especially when he's around new people. Not because I want him to change who he is, but because I hate seeing him get hurt and feel like an outcast. I don't want him to feel like he has to hide who he is, but I also don't want him to be picked on or excluded because of it. But then I feel like a complete arsehole for even thinking about this. I don't want him to think that I'm ashamed of him or that he has to conform to be accepted. I want him to feel free to be himself, but I'm also scared of him being hurt by others who don't get it. So, would I be the A if I talk to Oliver about maybe being a bit more low-key with his style? Comments. Commenter, don't do it. Kids will still bully him, and all he will remember is that you deterred him from expressing himself. Trust me, the same thing occurred in our house. I was trying to keep him from being bullied, but my child felt as though I didn't accept him and that he needed to pretend he was something he wasn't. Lots of later life therapy. If he's gay, if he's straight, let him be himself and tell him as long as he likes his clothes, that's all that matters. Sincerely, the mom of an amazing queer kid. OP. I get that, But at the same time it is so heartbreaking seeing the same thing happen to him over and over and over again. Commenter. Jesus, where do you live? Most kids don't care about this kind of thing these days. OP. I live in the West Midlands of England. I honestly don't think your point about most kids not caring is at all accurate. I see it every day. Commenter. Do not dull his shine because other people don't understand him. I understand it may be coming from a place of protection, but it needs to be addressed with the potential aggressors, not with forcing your son to change who he is. OP. But when you can't do anything more with potential aggressors. I have done and will continue to do everything I can, but sadly I can't literally watch his back 24/7, even though I would if I could. Anytime he has a comment made to him, he breaks his little heart, and it is so devastating seeing him go through that again and again. Update 1. Hey all, it's been about 26 days since my original post, and I thought I'd give an update now that Oliver has had his first week back at school. I can happily say that so far things are going much better than I'd hoped. Over the summer, Oliver and I had a really important heart-to-heart. I sat him down and told him just how incredibly proud I am of the person he is becoming. I made sure he knew that there is absolutely nothing he could ever do that would change the way I see him or make me love him any less. Honestly, it was a bit emotional and I even got a bit choked up. I told him that if wearing his favorite jacket, the one that's caused some hurt before, made him happy, I'd stand behind him 100%. But I also wanted to make sure he was prepared. I explained that while I'll always be there for him, I can't always be around to protect him, and he might have to stand up for himself if kids make fun of him. I made it clear that this doesn't mean he should change anything about who he is, but that he needs to be ready to handle his shiz if anyone says anything cruel. Oliver understood, and we spent the summer coming up with some playful comebacks together. He really wanted to take the jacket with him to school, so we made it a bit of a project. Imagining the kind of things kids might say and crafting witty replies that he could fire back with. It was actually pretty fun, and I think it helped him feel more confident about it. Now back to school. His new teacher knows all about his past struggles with bullying, and she's been amazing. She's keeping a close eye on things and making sure he feels safe and comfortable. It's made such a difference already, and Oliver's first week couldn't have gone better. He's even made a friend, a boy named Sam, and they've really hit it off. They're planning to meet up tomorrow at the wacky warehouse, and Oliver can't stop talking about it. It's been a long time since I've seen him this excited about spending time with someone his age. I know it's still early days, but seeing him come home happy and smiling each day has been such a relief. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and encouragement on my original post. I really took a lot of it to heart, and I think it made a big difference in how I approached all this. Update 2. Hey, I just wanted to hop on and give a small update about Oliver's play date over the weekend. Firstly, when Oliver was getting ready, he wanted to wear all his flamboyant clothes. He asked me if I thought it was a good idea. His friend had seen him in his jacket, but he was a little worried how he would react to the full Oliver. I told him to wear whatever he wanted, and if this friend was worth being friends with, they would accept him for exactly how he is. This made Oliver smile. He wore full Oliver outfit. When we were walking in, I could feel Oliver getting a bit nervous. He was bullied so much in his last school for how he was, so I understood why. I held his hand tight and gave it 2 squeezes. This means, I love you, something I learned to teach him from Reddit actually. The friend's dad was with him and he looked at Oliver and gave a little curious look. But apart from that, it was fine. The boy said he loved Oliver's clothes. They spent about 4 hours playing and we ended up eating together. On the way home, I told Oliver how proud I am of the little man he is. I am so proud of how he is so willing to be himself and so brave to continue despite any backlash he gets. I love him so much. This is my final update on this account. I don't know if I'll ever show you these posts, Oliver. Maybe in a few years when you're older so we can laugh at how worried I was about you. Your dad is so proud of you. I think you are the most amazing person in the whole world, even when you drive me absolutely nuts. I am so lucky to get to be your father. I am so lucky you are in my life. I love you. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Am I the a-hole for flipping out on my fiancé for canceling all the vegan food options from our wedding menu behind my back? My fiancé 31M and I, 25F, are getting married soon. There wasn't much that we disagreed on during the wedding planning except for food. Me and my family are vegans, and there are so many reasons why we chose this lifestyle, and one of them being that we have a history of health issues. My fiancé and his family are the complete opposite. They're hardcore meat eaters, which is fine by me, obviously. However, when deciding on the wedding food menu, I wanted to add 4 or 5 vegan options. My fiancé and his mom objected, saying it was a waste of money over food that isn't real food. They also argued that this would be offensive for their guests and suggested my vegan options just be the good old salads and appetizers. His mom wanted cupcakes, lol. I said no because for one, it's me and my family who's paying, and two, I want to make my guests feel welcome and not be treated as second-class citizens by being served salad. My fiancé made a face and said, "Isn't that what vegans eat?" I refused to argue about it and said it was final. The other day, I found out that he had canceled all the vegan options and took them off the menu completely and behind my back. I was seething. I called him at work, but he kept hanging up on me. I went straight to his workplace and confronted him there and just flipped out on him. He was stunned to see me. He at first said it was his mom's idea, then told me to go home because I was making a scene at the office. The fight continued at home, and he defended himself by saying that I sort of made him resort to doing this, after I kept brushing off his thoughts and input and refusing to accommodate his family. But there were plenty of meat options. Why can't I get 4 or 5 vegan options when I'm paying for it? He yelled that it was his wedding too, not my family's. My family said it was fine and they'll figure it out and told me to let it go. But I refused. Am I the a-hole for putting my foot down on this? Verdict: not the a-hole. Update 1. So his mom messaged me earlier to try to get me to listen to what she had to say after I kept ignoring her phone calls. She spent long walls of text just to address what I did at her son's workplace, calling it all kinds of stuff, from immature to unhinged. She then went on to explain how she's noticed that me and my family kept acting dismissive of her son's input and contributions to the wedding. She said that she noticed my behavior towards him and her entire family and wanted to speak up earlier but didn't, and tried to keep the peace. She then went on to address the food menu issue and denied her involvement in the cancellation of the vegan option, but that didn't mean she doesn't support her son's decision. Moreover, she thought it was so responsible of him to make that move because of my continual refusal to see how this stuff is a waste of money. She also pointed out how I kept saying I paid for it and said that technically this isn't just my money. It's mine and his because we're getting married. She suggested I wake up and get rid of my money I paid for it mentality. She finally mentioned how bad this whole situation is making me look and said that she and her son had already offered a number of compromises that I chose to brush off and decided to make it my weird hill to die on. She said that not only her son is upset, but she and the family are as well after hearing about it and suggested I just agree on their compromise and be done with it. This pissed me off beyond belief. I responded by letting her know that I'm still standing my ground on this even if I'll have to call the whole wedding off because of it. Because honestly, this is just ridiculous. It is my mom and dad. They don't even know what to say anymore. Apparently my fiancé saw my response to her. He's with her and is now trying to call me. But right now I'm waiting on him to get home and see if he's still insisting on the stance he took. I'll update if there's anything worth adding after we talk. Now for some comments. Comment 1, NTA. Are you sure you want to marry this man and his family? They have no respect at all for you and yours. P. Frankly, I have no idea why his mom feels so strongly about getting involved. I only included her in wedding planning only because I respect her, but I guess it's like they say, give an inch and they'll take a mile. Comment 2. Info. How many options are there in total? So like 4/5 non-vegan and 4/5 vegan, meaning 8-10 options for meals? Is this a buffet or restaurant reception? Or is this a multi-course menu and so there is essentially one vegan meal with 4/5 courses? NTA, because he did this behind your back without talking to you. But I'm wondering why he cares what other people eat. Also, he's the AH for claiming he doesn't know what vegans eat. You're vegan. He knows you eat more than salad. OP. Aside from the vegan, we have 6 options with meat. His mom picked one. I'm paying for the whole thing. Comment 3. If you marry him, this is the rest of your life. He'll do whatever his mom says when it comes to your kids and managing your life. Update 2. so the talk didn't go well. I waited for him to come home so we could have a final conversation about it, but he still insisted on his stance. For more details, his family are a bit on the heavy side. Nothing wrong with that, they're perfectly within their right to decide how to live, but they get easily offended at the mention of the words weight and food. I tried so hard to focus on the issue at hand, but I noticed there was a pattern of this behavior. He said it wasn't true and that this was just an attempt for me to throw past conflicts at him in order to win the current one. He claimed he tried to reason with me about why and how his guests might see those vegan options as offensive. Also said that his family love food and consider it a big deal, and how he didn't want his family to feel like there's certain options that they couldn't touch and feel that there's difference in how I treat them versus how I treat my family. He then went on to explain how it's just an event and how my family should just accept what's on the menu, and if they felt inconvenience, so what? It's just a one-time thing. They're not going to die if they had salad and appetizers. What he said wasn't a good enough reason for me because his folks are going to think and say what they want. But at the end of the day, it's my wedding. And to be honest, realizing that my partner himself thinks it's okay to steamroll my opinions and decisions simply because he's prioritizing others and their opinions over me was really upsetting and not something that could be looked past. Normally, I'm a person of rational discussions and compromises. I'm all about compromises. I'd compromised on much bigger matters than just food. But like people said, it's not about the food anymore if it ever was. Like, he'd literally lose nothing if he let me have what I wanted. But apparently he was willing to lose it all over this, which is fine by me. I gave him back the ring and called everything off. I just couldn't envision myself living like this any longer, having to walk on eggshells for his family and letting him basically override my opinions and have the final say no matter what. Marriage is about compromise, and here he has nothing to lose yet chose to do this to me and my family. Mind you, this is my first serious relationship and I didn't know what to expect, but it's safe to say that he and his mom and family did make it feel like I was taking crazy pills on many, many occasions. So that's that. Last thing he said was that I chose my family over him and ended everything for the sake of keeping him happy. Decision has been made and it's done. Just wanted to give an update to those who wanted it. Thank you so much for your endless stream of advice and support. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Good for you. Marriage is about compromise, and it doesn't sound like your ex is interested in compromising or even letting you have a say in things. That isn't a partnership. P. Thank you, and you're right. Honestly, I felt kind of hesitant about posting an update. In fact, I was hesitant about posting my situation as a whole. Normally, I'm not the type to share my private business online, but I was desperate. Like AITA, there were times where his family made me feel like I was taking crazy pills. Honestly, and I'm gonna say this anyway, I hate them. They always made me feel like an outsider and a stranger, never really warmed up to me, and instead pretended to like me, but it was obvious they resented me. They claimed that I'm a covert fatphobic, but in reality, I got mocked along with my family for being underweight due to health issues I'd mentioned before. Don't even get me started on ex-future MIL though. I feel as though I got to let it all out and vent. Comment 2. You go girl. Dude 100% laid out a roadmap where only his opinion matters and yours is irrelevant. This probably wasn't the first time, but it for sure would not be the last. Exactly. Like I said, I'd noticed a pattern of this behavior but kept rationalizing it, which was a huge mistake on my part. It's been utter torture trying to please him and his family. I'm an emotional mess right now, but there's this little voice of reassurance telling me I've gone through the worst and survived it. I'm so thankful this happened. It helped me see things clearer. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend I don't want to hear about her shitty boyfriend anymore? Hi Reddit. I am feeling really bad about this and need advice. I, 23, have been friends with my BFF Kayla since we were 11. She is awesome and has supported me through some really tough times, and I have been there for her through a lot of shit too. We have never fallen out and we always supported each other. Until now. Kayla has been with her boyfriend James for just over 2 years now. I liked him at first, he was good for her, he made her happy, so I was happy. But for the last year or so, every time I have seen or chatted to Kayla, all she has done is complain about him. Some of the stuff she has told me about him is super gross and I have lost all respect for him, and in turn, I have started losing respect for her. She has also changed a lot since being with him. She used to want to travel the world, explore and experience new things. Now she never leaves her house and wants to be a stay-at-home mother by the time she's 25. It makes me sad to see she has lost her sparkle. It all came to a head when we went for dinner for my birthday. She spent the whole night complaining about James. As always, telling me way too much personal stuff about him. As always, and just generally moaning. It was after we had finished our meal when I finally snapped and said I don't want to hear any more about her shitty boyfriend because everything I advise her to do, she just ignores and I have nothing left to say to her. I told her she should dump him if she hates him so much, and if she isn't going to dump him, then to quit bitching about him all the time because I didn't want to hear it anymore. I had had quite a few glasses of wine and was just feeling super bummed because she made my whole birthday dinner about her and her stupid boyfriend. This was 5 days ago and she hasn't spoken to me since. I messaged her the next morning apologizing and asked her if we could meet up to talk about it. But she hasn't responded. Now for some comments. OP. Thank you for your comment. I do actually agree with you after reflecting. I haven't ever told her that I'm tired of her not taking my advice, and I have never asked her to not complain about him. This was the first time I had challenged her. I have always been very patient with her and let her complain as much as she wants. This has left me feeling emotionally drained after every time I see her. I should have set boundaries in a calm and mature manner when I was sober. I was just so annoyed that she made me an entire birthday meal about her relationship issues. I had also just found out that I had got my dream job and wanted her to be happy for me. I took out my frustration on her and I spoke to her poorly. Thank you, I am going to try and fix it with her. Top commenter. I mean, you took the nuclear option and drunkenly exploded on her rather than having a civil conversation about how the constant complaining was impacting you and your friendship. Of course she's hurt and pissed off. Not to say she's free and clear of taking over your birthday, but she may honestly have no idea how much she complains or how draining it can be for others. The fact that you have lost respect for her means maybe it's time for the friendship to end. If you don't like her and you don't like being around her, what's the point of the relationship? Don't expect her to forgive you for handling the situation like you did instead of like a real friend would though. Alcohol ultimately didn't make you do this. OP. Alcohol didn't make me do this. I did it because I didn't communicate sooner and I had a lot of pent-up anger. I shouldn't have spoken to her like that and I am going to apologize. Commenter. Downvoted, you are the a-hole. Get off booze and other drugs. OP. I accept I'm the a-hole, but if I want to have a few glasses of wine on my birthday, that is my prerogative. I don't do drugs and I am over the legal drinking age. I had 3 glasses of wine on my birthday. Commenter. NTA. The best thing you can do is let her be right now. When she's ready to talk, she will reach out to you. OP. I'm worried that if I let her be, she will never reach out and I will lose her as a friend. I don't want to lose her. Despite her frustrating me with constantly talking about her boyfriend, she is a good person. I was thinking of writing her a letter to apologize and explain how I feel. IDK. Commenter. A letter may be a good idea, especially if she has blocked you on social media or is avoiding your messages. Do you have any mutual friends willing to tell Kayla how you feel? OP. She hasn't blocked me, but she has already ignored one message, so I feel like she would just keep ignoring me. All of our mutual friends have dropped her because they can't deal with her complaining. They're all telling me to unfriend her, but I'm not ready to do that. Commenter. Is the relationship just bad or is it abusive? Not acting like her usual self, her spark is gone. Those are red flags. If it is an abusive relationship and emotional abuse very much is abuse, then make sure to leave the door open for her to contact you when she's ready to leave. Abusers isolate and control their victims, and cutting off friends and family is part of the goal. If the support system is gone, it's harder to leave. So tell her that you will always be there for her if she decides to leave him. That does not mean you have to keep listening to her. Tell her that you are done hearing about this guy and set whatever boundaries you need, but tell her that when she is ready to leave him, you are there for her. P. It isn't abusive. If anything, she's not very nice to him. She doesn't like the guy. I don't know why she stays with him. She struggles with her mental health and he is a very lazy guy, so encourages her to stay in bed all day. He isn't what she needs, but he isn't abusive. Commenter. Who paid for dinner? OP. I paid. It did need to be said, but not in the way it was. I want to apologize for the way I say it, not for how I feel. Commenter. So let me get this straight. Your best friend of 12 years goes to your birthday dinner empty-handed and you pay for it. She spends the whole night making it about herself and her stupid BF, and it got you to the point of yelling at her, rightfully so. And now she's giving you the cold shoulder? This girl is not your friend. She is a user. This is not a friendship worth having. IDC what her financial situation is. If it's your BFF's birthday, you make it work. It's not about money, it's about effort. If she truly couldn't afford to go out, then she could have made you dinner and a birthday cake and bought a $2 bottle of wine. P. Yeah, I guess that's true. I told her not to get me anything because she's broke. I wasn't expecting anything, but I was expecting her to at least ask me how I am instead of just talking about her boyfriend. Date 1. Edit. Thank you all for your comments. I can see you're all very divided about if I'm the a-hole or not, and I get why. I have accepted that I am the a-hole for going nuclear when drunk, and I know I should have spoken to her in a mature and calm manner way earlier than I did. She shouldn't have ruined my birthday dinner, but she is struggling. She didn't deserve to be spoken to like that. I have decided to write her a letter apologizing for the way I spoke to her. I am going to write very nicely that I still stand by what I said and that I love her, but hearing her complain repeatedly about the same issue without taking advice is very draining. I'm going to tell her I want to still be friends and that I don't want this to ruin our friendship. I will also recommend she goes back to therapy. She had a therapist in high school but ghosted her. If she then reads my letter and decides to end the friendship, then that is up to her. I will be sad, but everything happens for a reason, right? Update 2. Firstly, thank you so much for everyone who commented and messaged me, nice or not. It was great to get everyone's opinion. So, I wrote Kayla a letter like I said I was going to in my edit. It felt very formal and weird to do, but for some reason doing it over text felt wrong. I wanted her to know I'm sincere. I said that I love her and I value our friendship extensively and apologized for the way I spoke to her. I said alcohol wasn't to blame, I spoke to her like an a-hole and she didn't deserve it. I wrote that I have felt frustrated about the situation for a long time now because it upset me seeing her so frustrated and upset all the time with the person who is supposed to cherish and respect her the most. I told her that I wholeheartedly believe that she should end the relationship. I said I knew this wasn't my place to say and that she didn't need to take my advice and that I would support her in whatever decision she made. But if she decided to stay with him, I need her to stop complaining to me about James and their relationship because it was too draining for me to hear it. I said of course she could talk to me about anything major, but hearing the same complaints on an almost daily basis was exhausting, especially when she wouldn't take or even listen to any advice. I made sure to tell her I loved her and I apologized again. I actually apologized 4 times in the letter. I put it through her front door the day after I posted here. She called me yesterday and asked to meet. I went round to her place last night and we talked for just over 2 hours. She told me she actually broke up with James the day after my birthday. Apparently me snapping at her about it shocked her into realizing how often she was upset by him and how much she complained. She has spent the last few days processing everything, so that's why I had heard from her, which is so valid. She actually thanked me for doing it, which is crazy. She said although I was a bit of an a-hole, it was what she needed to hear. We both cried a lot and hugged it out and then watched 90 Day Fiancé LOL. I think it's safe to say we will be okay. She is obviously struggling because she is grieving their relationship and breakups are awful, but I will support her through this like I always do because I know that she will support me when I next get my heart broken. I am single AF right now, but who knows what the future holds. So the TLDR is that me snapping at my best friend at my birthday dinner for complaining about her boyfriend for the whole meal caused her to dump him. I didn't lose the friendship, I actually got my best friend back. I can't wait to support her while she finds herself again. Thank you all again, have a great day everyone. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.